present Kenneth Williams, Derek Nimmo, Clement, Freud and Peter Jones in just a minute. And as the minute waltz fades away, here to tell you about it is our chairman, Nicholas Parsons.
Thank you. Thank you very much indeed. Hello and welcome to the first in this new series of Just a Minute. And we're delighted to have our four regular, most experienced and most skilled players of the game here to compete against each other and against the chairman, I've no doubt, as usual. They have to speak, if they can, for just 60 seconds on some subject that I will give them without hesitation, without repetition, and without deviating from the subject on the card. Kenneth, the subject is the first of a new series. You have just a minute, and you start now.
On the first of a new series, I would very much like all those people listening to be able to see this team sitting so composedly with an audience full of rapt attention, listening to these pearls of wisdom that are going to fall from our lips. As we belong to the EEC, it would be appropriate...
Clement Freud has challenged.
Repetition of E.
Well, that's a clever challenge and accurate one. Clement, you get a point for a correct challenge, and you take over the subject, and there are 43 seconds left. The first of a new series starting now.
One of the most pleasant things about being in on the first of the new series is that one can sit here quietly and appreciate the full beauty of...
Peter Jones.
If you sit there quietly, you can't play this game.
That's a very good challenge, isn't it?
Seems reasonable.
And we give you a point for a good challenge,
thank you very
Peter,
much.
and you take over the subject, and there are 32 seconds left, the first of a new series starting now.
Yes, it's nice to look at the rest of the artists who are participating because...
Clement Freud is challenged.
If you sit there looking at the rest of the artists, you can't play this game.
It is extremely easy to sit there looking at them and still play the game because you don't have to sit quietly. Peter, I disagree with the challenge, so you get a point for that. And you have 27 seconds on the first of a new series starting now.
It's difficult for me to describe them, except perhaps...
Derek Nimmo has challenged and your light came on.
I'd like to say welcome to a new series.
And what is your challenge?
There isn't a challenge. I just want to say hello. I want to be nice and friendly. No challenge. You don't have to challenge all the time.
Oh, well.
It's the new spirit we've got abroad.
I see.
We be jolly and gay and pleasant to each other. Welcome to a new series. I did rather nice. Thank you.
I don't think that I can give you a bonus point
I don't
for a
want
witty
one.
challenge.
I don't want to... No charity. I just want to say hello.
As your challenge was incorrect and you interrupted Peter Jones, he naturally gets a point for that, and he continues with the subject, and there are 25 seconds left, starting now.
What can I say about these others?
Kenneth Williams has challenged.
Well, all this, what can I say, and these beseechings and this repetition. I mean, he's already said it's nice to be here. I made all those points. I think the subject should be returned to me. I am, after all, the person who was entitled to this in the first place.
What was your challenge, Kenneth?
Well, a deviation.
Peter, you have another point, and you have 22 seconds left. The first of a new series, starting now.
Well, they are available. That's about all I can say about my fellow passengers.
Derek Nimmo's
Repetition
challenge.
of say.
Yes, you did
Okay.
say before.
Yes,
and
it's so long ago that I thought he'd probably have forgotten.
Yes, and it's jolly difficult to have you been interrupted yourself. And bad luck, Peter, but you have got a lot of other points from them. Derek Nimmo, you have the subject, you have a point, and you have 18 seconds, the first of a new series, starting now.
In 1964, I was present at the Wanderers Ground in South Africa to see the first of the new series. My goodness, what a series it turned out to be. The splendid team that we sent out that year, clad in their white...
Peter Jones.
A repetition of out. He said in 1953 he was out in South
Africa, and he was out again there.
Absolutely
and
right.
Peter
Jolly
got-
good. What a keen ear he's got.
Yes, and what a sarcastic contestant he's got beside him. 5 seconds for you now, Peter Jones, on the first of a new...
How long?
5 seconds.
5 seconds,
Yes, the first of a new series, starting now.
Well, I would like to say, if it's the last thing I
Clement Freud challenged.
Repetition of say.
Yes, you did say before, and unfortunately... Clement, you have 3 seconds on the first of a new series, starting now.
I'd like to...
Peter Jones has
do,
challenged.
hesitation. Didn't start quickly enough at all. Terribly slow.
Not for you, Peter, but I'm afraid not enough, quite enough for the game. 2 seconds, Clement, on the first of a new series, starting now.
And therefore I'd like to greet every...
Derek Nimmo.
I haven't challenged.
It must have been a correct challenge because you
someone's
said
like
it was
to-
2 seconds
Well, who
and he
pressed that
said
button?
nothing. First of all, it was 3 seconds.
Well, that's what I did. I pressed my buzzer a moment ago on the say it didn't go on. This time I just had a little tentative one.
Are you blaming your equipment because you're
My
falling
buzzer's
behind?
no good. I've got a faulty buzzer. How can you start a new series with a faulty buzzer? That's what I want to know.
Your buzzer-
A bad workman always blames his tools.
Your buzzer's perfectly all right.
My
Occasional
buzzer's
like-
not working.
Now,
Well,
my
what's-
point is
Yes,
that
what's your point?
Clement had 3 seconds
Yes.
in which to make a speech.
Yes.
And I buzzed
Yes.
hesitation.
Yes.
You then said, now you've got 2 seconds.
But during that second, he
nothing.
said something.
What did he say? Nothing.
He did speak. He's had a definite phrase, the full content I can't remember, but he did speak.
You're the chairman and you can't remember what the last speaker said?
It's going to be a rotten series, I can tell you.
I don't know.
like
You know, his buzzer isn't working. You can't remember. What chance have we got?
We won't have a chance in hell if you keep up this much longer. Right, Peter, shut up. Kenneth,
I haven't said anything.
He's losing his nerve.
I'm not surprised.
I said once the four
I
boys
want my
get
buzzer to
together-
be repaired.
I said once the four boys get together, it's all against the chairman. Clement, you've been very, very restrained and very civilized. You have another point and 1 second to go. The first of a new series, starting now.
The end of it.
Well, that whistle, which is blown by Ian Mester, tells us that 60 seconds is up, and whoever is speaking at that moment gains an extra point. On this occasion, it was Clement Freud, and after about 5 minutes into the show, we got through the first round. The next subject, we are going to start with Clement Freud. It is gravy. Clement, on that lovely subject for just a minute, starting now.
Gravy are, or is, the juice, possibly juices.
Derek Nimmo has challenged.
Hesitation.
Yes, because he wasn't sure whether gravy R was correct or not. 55 seconds, Derek, on gravy with you, starting now.
In medieval times, they always used to place the gravy combined with the meat.
Clement Freud has challenged.
Hesitation.
Yes, if I give it against you, I give it against him. 52 seconds on gravy with you, Clement, starting now.
I can't get my winkle out, isn't it a doer? I can't get it out with an old pen.
Kenneth Williams has challenged.
Anyone
I
here?
heard out twice.
You did hear out twice, and that's
And
a repetition.
can't twice.
Well, how dare you? What was that, a bit of doggerel? What were you reciting?
It doesn't matter. He was going on gravy.
I see. He was, was
He was dishing the gravy.
I've never
to us.
seen a winkle with gravy.
Those little tiny sausages. You always have gravy with them. Kenneth, you have a correct challenge for which you get a point, and you have 47 seconds on gravy starting now.
It is appropriate this subject should come to me, because my dear old friend Maudie Fittleworth, fun with a Frankfurter, always said there was nothing like a drop of gravy to wash 'em down with. I thought that was excellent culinary advice. I don't think anyone would dare to challenge me on those sort of matters. I have a palate, a very definite taste.
Peter Jones has challenged.
Repetition of very.
I'm
Did
afraid...
very early on.
Yes, you did. I thought he was going to say palate again. Peter, you have a
Parrot?
correct challenge. You have 22 seconds on gravy starting now.
I can give you a very good recipe for ploughman's gravy, which involves cutting up a kidney and a rasher of bacon and some shallots. You put them into an iron pan, allow them to go brown, and then when they have done so, pour in a handful of powdered oatmeal, and then once it has got darker, you pour in...
Peter Jones was then speaking when the whistle went. He gained an extra point for doing so and has moved into the lead, one ahead of Clement Freud. Derek Nimmo, will you begin the next round? The subject is my left Wellington boot. Can you talk about that for just a minute, starting now?
It always, of course, brings to mind that famous Battle of Waterloo, when the Duke, who at that time was Marquis of Welsh, led the British troops to victory against Napoleon. And then the cavalry was commanded for him by Paget, later to become the first Marquis of Anglesey. And I remember every time I put on my left-hand Wellington boot, this famous victory. Shut up. If I want to say and then I
Clement
remember...
Freud has challenged you.
Deviation.
Why?
Shut up. Nothing to do with Wellington boots or what he was talking about.
You have the subject and you have 32 seconds. My left Wellington boot starting now.
When I put on my left Wellington boot, the chairman, who was fighting on the other side, jumped upon his horse and galloped off into the middle distance towards all directions, at which my left Wellington boot came off.
Peter Jones has challenged.
Repetition of which?
Yes, he did say it twice. Try and resist the temptation on some of the smaller words, Peter.
Which
14 seconds.
small word? Oh.
On my left Wellington boot with you, starting now.
Almost identical to my right Wellington boot, with the possible exception of the toe cap, which differs in this respect. The right-hand side...
Clement Freud has challenged.
Repetition of right.
Yes, because right is not one of the
No,
words.
it's a five-letter word, like which.
Yes. 3 seconds for you, Clement, on my left Wellington boot, starting now.
The toastmaster came into the arena shouting,
Kenneth Williams, your turn to begin.
Oh, well, I was wondering. You never ask.
Don Quixote or Don Quixote. Whichever way you'd like to pronounce it, that is the subject, and you have just a minute in which to speak on it, starting now.
Well, this was a man who had the illusion that he was part of sort of knight-errantry, as you might say, a knight, and, I've repeated knight.
Derek Nimmo has challenged.
2 nights.
Ah, but I meant the one with a K as opposed to the one with an N. You see, that's what I mean.
Unfortunately, Kenneth, it is not, it's what you say and not what is written. 50 seconds for you, Derek, on Don Quixote, starting now.
Charles Parker, makeup man extraordinary, had the task of making up Peter O'Toole to play Don Quixote. Sancho Panza, his great chum, once said to him, "Those who have..." And I can't repeat anymore because...
Clement Freud has challenged.
He thought it was going
deviation.
Why?
Well, he hasn't mentioned Don Quixote, and he's trying to make us think that Sancho Panza was a friend of the makeup man. Who is
I
the
have
only
mentioned Don
person he has
Quixote.
mentioned to date, and that is devious.
No, I mentioned Don Quixote.
No,
I was making him up to play Don Quixote.
No, I know you established that he was, in my
Well,
mind, and
best.
after all, Sancho Panza is the...
We are going by your mind now, are we?
It's better than going by yours, Clement. Thank you very much.
Your mother is in again.
I've got port somewhere, Clement. I don't expect any from my so-called friends up here. I think you established that you were on the subject of Don Quixote, so I'm giving you the benefit of the doubt. You have 41 seconds starting now.
The Man of La Mancha was the name of the musical that was called, created.
Peter Jones.
Hesitation.
I would agree with that one, Peter. And you now have 36 seconds on Don Quixote starting now.
I think he is possibly the most boring character in fiction. This book...
Derek Nimmo has challenged.
I don't.
You just wanted to see if your buzzer was working.
I was actually, yes. It
It's
did work.
working beautifully. You can't get points that way, Derek. Peter Jones gets a point for that
But
wrong
that's
challenge.
not fair. That's...
You get a point. It's
the-
perfectly fair from your point of view.
Is it?
Yes.
Yes. Oh, I see. But then I've lost the thread, which was pretty slender at the start.
No, you were saying you thought it was
that is
boring.
one of the problems.
I think it's the just-a-minute equivalent of bumping and boring, and very boring it is.
I quite agree, Peter. And you have 30 seconds starting now.
It's divided into 3 large tomes, and I don't know many people who've managed to wade through more than 1.5 of them. Because, you see, each chapter involves an adventure which is frequent.
Derek Nimmo challenge.
Hesitation.
Yes, I'm afraid so. 14 seconds, Derek, on Don Quixote starting now.
The word quixotic comes from Don Quixote or Don Quixote, and it is a kind of expression
Peter
that
Jones
is
has
often-
challenged.
Hesitation.
Yes, I think Don Quixote is giving us a great deal of hesitation. There are 6.5 seconds with you, Peter, on Don Quixote starting now.
I'd like to be quite sure that Ian Messiter's clock hasn't stopped, or...
Kenneth Williams has challenged.
Deviation, this has nothing to do with Don Quixote.
I quite agree, Kenneth, and you have a point for that. And you have 3 seconds on Don Quixote starting now.
We have the term tilting at windmills from this, and we also have Quixote.
Well, at the end of that round, Peter Jones got some more points. He's now moved back into the lead alongside Clement Freud. Derek Nimmo's a little way behind in second place, and Kenneth just a little way behind that in third place, because they were equal. And Clement, we're back with you to start, and the subject is the kindest thing I ever did. We'll give you a few seconds to think about that. And tell you to go for 60 seconds if you can, starting now.
If kindness can be measured by helping elderly ladies across the road, the kindest thing I ever did was to assist an incredibly old woman go past a roundabout onto a street, down a lane, into an avenue. She was roughly 93 years old, and her sight as well as her hearing were failing, which is why she didn't recognize me. "Hello," I said to her, and she said, "What did you say?"
And Derek Nimmo challenged.
3 cents.
Well, 2 would have been
Repetitive.
enough. There are 28 seconds for the kindest thing I ever did, Derek, starting now.
The kindest thing I ever did was to help an
Kenneth
old...
Williams has
He's
challenged.
going very slow, deliberately. That's what he's doing. I mean, that's just trickery. That's just using oratory as a trick, isn't it? It's a trick.
It is, yes, it is.
He's not making any attempt to convey information. I want...
I don't think he was going slow enough to call it hesitation, though.
I think
must
he's
be fair.
trying to conjure up the picture of this very elderly lady. I think he did it very graphically, really.
Well, I think that he wasn't quite hesitating, so we give him the benefit of the doubt and 25 seconds to continue, starting now.
The kindest thing I ever did was to assist Clement Freud to go around...
Kenneth Williams has challenged.
Yes, I mean,
I would agree with
him.
him.
And he's never
exactly
Clement Freud
plays
any
speed,
case.
that's all.
Well, that's all right, but Kenneth Williams now has the subject, and there are 20 seconds left, starting now.
The kindest thing I ever did was to offer to help Derek Nimmo and Clement Freud and Peter Jones to perform in a game called Just a Minute. They welcomed me with open arms and said, on any occasion when misfortune forces us into some
Derek
terrible...
Nimmo has challenged.
Hesitation.
No. Kenneth, you keep going, having gained another point for 3 seconds on the kindest thing I ever did, starting now.
We shall look to you for the humanitarian gentleman that you are.
Well, Kenneth got quite a few points in that round, including the one for speaking when the whistle went. He's moved forward. He's still, alas, in 4th place, just behind Derek Nimmo. But Derek's creeping up on our 2 leaders, Peter Jones and Clement Freud. The subject is getting across. Would you talk about that for just a minute, Peter, starting now?
Well, I haven't got much to say about getting across. I think I'd better give
Kenneth
it to
Williams has
Becky.
start.
Deviation, if you've got nothing to say, why don't you just shut up and I'll do it.
That's
We
why
give you
I
a
said-
point because the audience enjoyed what you said, Kenneth. But Peter wasn't deviating from the subject on the card, so it was an incorrect challenge. So he gets a point for a wrong challenge, and he keeps going, starting now.
I remember my first visit to America. I had to go to Southampton and get on a small boat which joined the liner 2 or 3 miles outside owing to some labor dispute at the docks. And when I arrived on the top of this small vessel...
Derek Nimmo, you pressed your buzzer.
Oh, well, I don't know. It was small, wasn't it? A ship? I don't know, some kind of... I can't remember.
No, he didn't repeat anything. I was
No,
listening very carefully.
No, there was a...
I said vessel. and
You said
then
vessel.
ship.
You thought he was
Rather
going to
good.
say ship again. So
No, there
Peter
was
gets a point
repetition.
for a wrong
It was
challenge.
Clay, remember?
And Derek, your challenge was
What was it?
incorrect. Peter has a point. There are 22 seconds left on getting across, starting now. Clement Freud has challenged.
Hesitation.
Yes, Peter.
Is it
You?
me?
Yes, it was you.
I thought you were looking at him.
No, it's him now. Clement Freud has a point. And you have 20 seconds on getting across. And I advise anybody who gets started to get across, otherwise they're going to... starting now.
If you serve in the British Army and perform some enormous feat of bravery, you are likely to be awarded the Military Cross, which is known in popular terms as getting a cross. As a result of this, you are asked to Buckingham Palace, and some duty royal attends you, pinning a ribbon onto your left lapel.
Clement Freud, you've got another point for speaking when the whistle went. You're 1 point behind our leader, who is Peter Jones. Derek Nimmo in third place. And Kenneth Williams almost equal with him in third place. And Peter Jones, your turn to begin. The subject, pleasantry.
Well, there are those little things, not exactly jokes or even quips, but...
Derek Nimmo challenged.
Hesitation.
Hesitation, Derek. You have a correct challenge, and you have 53 seconds on pleasantries starting now.
What ho, fruit, how frightfully nice to see you. It is a lovely day. Oh, my goodness me, isn't it a long time since we last met? What a jokey chap you are. I know, Freddie, Bertie boy. You're looking absolutely marvellous. Mary, how is your cousin George? Oh, I do remember Auntie Mabel last time she came across the side of the channel. I do think it's quite simply lovely.
Clement Freud is challenged.
Repetition.
Of what?
What? Absolutely right.
He did say it quite a lot, didn't he? Clement, you have a point and 31 seconds for pleasantries starting now.
Come and have tea with me and listen to my doilies is the sort of...
Kenneth Williams is challenged.
Deviation, you can't listen to a doily. I've never held an intelligent conversation with a doily in my life.
No.
So doilies are under cakes, aren't they? Anyway, I've never talked to one.
Or next to carts.
Oh, you mean doily cart. Oh, I see. Oh, you mean you know the family.
Well, Kenneth, we would like to hear from you. And I think that doilies does sound like doilies, and I don't think many people have talked about doily cart as doilies, and Mr. Doily Cart himself would be turning in his grave at the thought of it. So, Kenneth, we'll give it to you and say that you have 26 seconds on pleasantries starting now.
They range from watch a cock, which of course is pretty rude in the sense of crude, not in any...
Oh, Derek Nimmo's challenged. Rude? It's very rude. But as it's the last round...
It was repetition.
No, it was repetition, but it's the last round, and you couldn't possibly win, even
I
if you
didn't
kept
repeat.
going.
I said rude in the sense of crude. Where's the repetition,
Oh,
dearie?
I'm sorry.
Wash your ears out.
I thought he said rude twice.
I thought...
I didn't, you great fool. I mean, I don't know why he's sitting over there. Why don't I give him an earring aid?
Three of us.
I'm afraid most of the audience thought you said rude twice.
No.
Did I?
It's all right. We're all on his side. You don't have to shout for him like that. Even if he said rude twice, I was still going to leave it with him for the end of the show. Because he started, we want you to finish.
Tis
Pleasantries,
pathetic when
19 seconds, starting now.
Let all the rest depart, and only some several dukes and I shall in this stately conclave make departure, and thus with all our minds on one intent shall know... I said shall twice.
Why don't you keep going? Clement Freud, what have you challenged for?
3 shells.
All right, we'll have to give it to you because it's a correct challenge. There are 6 seconds on pleasantries starting now.
In the evening, when the lights are dim, and my
Peter Jones has challenged.
Hesitation.
Yes, Peter, you have 3 seconds on pleasantries starting now.
I threw the money on the bed and I said to the girl's father...
Well, we do hope you've enjoyed this edition of Just a Minute. We've really enjoyed playing it. I've even enjoyed them being rude to me for once. It's, I must tell you the final result. Kenneth Williams did do very well at the finish, and he came up into 2nd place alongside Derek Nimmo, which is very good after such a long absence from the game, Kenneth. And Clement Freud was just a few points ahead of them, but he was 1 point behind this week's winner, who was Peter Jones. We do hope you've enjoyed it, because I said we've enjoyed it. From all of us here, goodbye.
The chairman of Just a Minute was Nicholas Parsons. The program was devised by Ian Messiter and produced by David Hatch. We present Kenneth Williams, Derek Nimmo, Peter Jones and Jean Marsh in Just a Minute. And as the minute waltz fades away, here to tell you about it is our chairman, Nicholas Parsons.
Thank you. Thank you very much indeed. Hello and welcome to Just a Minute. Well, once again, our four contestants are going to compete against each other and try and speak for 60 seconds on some subject that I will give them without hesitation, without repetition, and without deviating from the subject on the card if they can. And we'll start the show this week with Kenneth Williams. Kenneth, can you talk on the subject of sparklers for just a minute, starting now?
Well, I was at a birthday party recently, and instead of candles on the cake, it was sparklers, and a very pretty sight it made, and they offered me a slice of it. But I was afraid, while it was being cut, of being burned with these bits that were coming out of these, for mentioned sparklers, yes, sparklers. And I'm allowed to say that twice, because it's on the card, isn't it? And the other thing, of course, sparklers always makes you think of is jewellery, diamonds. Often have this appellation attached to them. One thinks of the Eustace diamonds, one thinks of the Cohen.
Derek Nimmo has challenged.
Rendition of diamonds.
Yes, you repeated the diamonds
Well,
twice.
they're a girl's best friend, aren't they?
Got away from the sparklers and went on to diamonds. Derek, you have a correct challenge. You get a point for that. You have 23 seconds. The subject is sparklers, and you start now.
I remember a little concert party in Prestatyn in North Wales, and I used to be taken to by my Aunt Beatrice, who lives there, and there was a group called the Sparklers, who used to play most beautifully, all kinds of things. They had lovely hats on, Pierrot hats, and bombles going down their
And
jumpers.
Peter Jones has challenged.
Repetition of hats.
Yes, you had too many hats on those sparklers. 9 seconds are left, Peter. You have a correct challenge, a point, and the subject, and you start now.
I can remember the smell of the bonfire at my old school and the roasting potatoes and these sparklers, people running about hither and thither and round about the Oh, dear.
Whoever is speaking when the whistle goes, which tells us that 60 seconds is up, gains the extra point. Peter Jones was doing it on that occasion, so he has a lead at the end of that round. Derek, will you begin the next round? The subject is the three witches. Will you talk about them, if you can? 60 seconds, starting now.
The three witches. Well, first of all, of course, there's witch, W-H-I-C-H. Which way are you going today? An interrogatory word. And then there's witch, meaning a sorcerer, a worshipper of the devil. And then spelt with a Y, it can mean witch alder, or witch elm, or witch hazel. But I suppose if one really thinks of the three witches, one goes back to the Bard, to Shakespeare, to Macbeth, the three weird sisters. And it's frightfully unlucky to talk about in any theatre. Double, ditto, toil and trouble, fire burn and cauldron bubble. Oh, I'd love to play one of those parts. You could play with great long hair and a
And
crazy
Jean Marsh's
voice
challenge.
and make noises like that one.
You said play twice.
You did say play twice.
Oh, yes, I did. Yes, quite right. Jolly good. Very good.
Oh, it's obvious what she's doing. She's getting in right on the end of it. With only a few seconds to go, she's getting in on the end, you know.
That's very good if you don't play it as often as you do, Kenneth.
Yeah, she's very astute.
Jean, the subject is the three witches. You have a point for a correct challenge. You have 5 seconds left, starting now.
Round the corner from my house there's a marvellous pub called the Three Witches. So...
At the end of the round, Derek Nimmo, Jean Marsh, and Peter Jones are all equal in the lead. Peter, will you begin the next round? What I would like right now. That is the subject that Ian Messner's thought of. Would you talk about it or on it? Round about it, if you like, for just a minute, starting now.
I would like this roof to be pushed back and the sunshine to pour in on everybody and fresh air. Then a fanfare of trumpets which would precede the sound of the Coldstream Guards band marching down the aisle. It would liven the whole place up. Then a dozen waiters with trays full of ice-cold Australian beer, which would be distributed free to everybody who wanted some. And I would...
Kenneth Williams has challenged.
Deviation. He's got no right to plug Australian beer in this case.
I think he's every right, because the programme is very popular in Australia. And he wasn't deviating from the subject, Kenneth, so he gets a point for that. And there are 29 seconds for you to continue with the Australian beer, anything you like.
Then, when we'd drunk enough of it, we would push the seats to the walls and all dance madly to the band of the Coldstream.
And the Coldstream Guards came in again.
Well, some would say you can't have too much of a good thing, but I'm afraid in just a minute you can if you repeat it. There are 22 seconds left for you, Derek, now, on what I would like right now, starting now.
Well, I would like the Royal Marines and the Argyll and Sutherland Highlanders to come in with trays filled with champagne and great bottles of Alka-Seltzer for us to consume afterwards, and then taste the marmalade and crumpet for tea and jelly meals. Who's doing the butting? Stop it.
I am.
Why?
You're not allowed to advertise. The BBC Charter doesn't allow it. You can't mention Alka-Seltzer as a patent name.
You've mentioned it as well now.
Oh, did
So he was deviating by doing so. So we give you the subject, Kenneth, and there are 7 seconds on what I would like right now, starting now.
would be to be taken in a dirigible. Nothing could be more beautiful than to float silently over the Earth's surface. Yes, that means I've got a point, doesn't it? A point, I've got a point there, haven't
You've
I?
got 2 points. You've got
Yes.
also one for speaking when the whistle went. You are in second place, equal with Jean Marsh, 1 point behind Derek Nimmo and Peter Jones, who are equal in the lead.
That's the same as being last, isn't
So
it?
it's... Kenneth, your turn to begin again. The subject, Kubla Khan. Would you talk about him if you can? Just a minute, starting now.
Well, I suppose the line that comes to mind is the Coleridge in Xanadu did Kubla Khan a stately pleasure dome decree. One thinks of him in this rather cultivated fashion, whereas when we realize he was a descendant of Genghis, we're told by historians, done to death millions of people and abbeys, pyramids of skulls as commemoration of the event. Well, I don't think that kind of thing can possibly be approved of in decent company. We don't want those sort of people about. In fact, that whole tribe I would consign cheerfully to oblivion. That is where all such wickedness rightfully belongs to...
Jean Marsh has challenged.
Wickedness, twice.
Yes, you're right, Jean. And you have the subject of Kubla Khan, and there are 10 seconds left, starting now.
When I lived in Stoke Newington, next door to me abided Rashida and Kubla Khan, who owned the Star of India restaurant and who became great friends of mine.
Well, your friends gave you an extra point for speaking when the whistle went, Jean, and you're now in second place, 1 point behind our leader, Derek Nimmo. Derek, your turn to begin. The subject, floral dancing. Can you talk about that for just a minute, starting now?
Floral dancing, yes, what a lovely subject on a warm day like today. Now, the nicest kind of floral dancing I'd ever seen was on the Indonesian peninsula on an island called Bali. Absolutely beautiful, magnificent place. And there, in a village called Ubud, they do a lovely floral dance. Yeah, sounding like Kenneth Williams, aren't I? But,
Kenneth Williams has challenged.
Deviation. He's mentioned Kenneth Williams, and I'm nothing to do with floral dancing. I don't want the impression to go about people
Complete deviation from the subject.
flowers and doing dancing.
Kenneth, I agree with your challenge. You have a point. You had 36 seconds on floral dancing, starting now.
All I know is what that song says. I felt so lonely standing there, for I could only stand and stare, for I had no maid with me. Lonesome I should have to be in a quaint old Cornish town, or something about the floral dance. It goes,
all together in the floral
charming little song about the floral dance.
Yeah, but you were challenged long before you got there.
Apropos?
stand. Standing.
You did say stand twice. 30 seconds for you, Derek, on floral dancing, starting now.
And these girls came in with jasmine flowers behind their ears to do a dance called the La Bonne, which is very beautiful. Now, also, as Kenneth Williams said...
Jean Marsh, a challenge.
Beautiful twice.
You get a point, Jean, and you have 21 seconds on floral dancing, starting now.
The only official floral dancing is, as Kenneth Williams drew attention to, the one in Cornwall that takes place in Mevagissey. It happens on
Peter Jones.
It takes place in Helston. It doesn't take place in Mevagissey.
How do you know? What right have you got? That's most ungallant. That lady's been all over Cornwall. She knows more about Cornwall than you've had hot dinners.
I've spent
They
lovely
put it
holidays
about
in
that
Cornwall.
it goes on in Helston, but it really goes on
But doesn't
in
it also
Mevagissey.
take place elsewhere, even though it is traditionally associated with Helston?
It
Why
actually
did she say-
started
she
in
said-
Mevagissey.
Oh, all right.
10 and a half seconds for you, Jean, on floral dancing, starting now.
It is a fertility rite practiced by the maidens of the aforesaid village in order to attract the young gentleman into marriage.
Peter Jones has challenged.
Do they know this in Mevagissey?
Yes. That's why it's got such a large population.
Give Peter Jones a bonus point for a good challenge, and we need the subject with Jean Marsh, who has 2 seconds to continue on floral dancing, starting now.
They swathe themselves.
Peter Jones, it's your turn to begin. The subject is why I am not winning at the moment. To be perfectly fair, Peter, you're only 2 points behind our joint leaders. So would you talk on that subject for just a minute, if you can, starting now?
Well, I'm not winning because, of course, I can't really play the game. And it's my opinion that if Shakespeare and Milton and Ivan Novello were taking part in it, they would repeat themselves and wander off the point in a delightful way, just like I do. Because, you see, it is a natural thing to say the same thing for effect, to pause for a moment, to supplement that...
Derek Nimmo challenged.
Yes, quite right.
Yes. Derek gets a point and 32 seconds on why... Oh, this is interesting. The subject is, Derek, why I am not winning at the moment.
Well, I play chess by correspondence, and why I'm not winning... at the
Peter
present
Jones, a
moment.
challenge.
Well, he is winning at the moment.
You're perfectly correct.
No,
You
if
get
you
a-
listen-
What were you going to say, Derek?
You didn't listen to what I was saying, which I said
What were you
I
s-
play chess by correspondence, and why I'm not winning at the moment in my game of chess.
Ah, brilliant, brilliant, absolutely.
Yes. Right, Derek, you got the subject back. There are 27 seconds left on why I'm not winning at the moment, starting now.
I'm a rather gloomy fellow. I don't have very winning ways, I'm afraid, and that's why I'm not winning at the moment. Your affection, the hearts of the audience, that is...
Jean Marsh has challenged.
Deviation, he has extremely winning ways and is very much loved.
Yes. The audience judgment, which has made Derek smile.
Creepy thing to do.
Has
You've
to
got
give
yourself a
way.
point there, hasn't you?
She gets a point and 19 seconds on why I'm not winning at the moment, starting now.
I am not winning at the moment because, according to Kenneth Williams, I'm not very prettily dressed. He reproved me when I arrived, saying,
Kenneth Nimmo has
Deviation.
challenged.
This is going to
Haven't
make me
got
look
that
like a
last
blackguard in the eyes of the...
well, you
My
did.
character.
But Derek Nimmo actually challenged.
Well, Jean is winning at the moment because she got that last point.
But no, she's not actually. She's you are point ahead of her.
Oh, am I?
So
Oh.
your
Well, she
challenge
is
is
now.
incorrect. So Jean gets a point, and she's in the lead now with you. So she has to continue with the subject. It's very interesting. For 11 seconds, if she can. Why I'm not winning at the moment, starting now.
Why I am not winning at the moment is an absolute lie, because in fact I am either in the lead or the co-lead with Derek Nimmo, and so I should...
Derek Nimmo's challenge.
2 leads.
There were 2 leads.
Ah.
Yes, what a pity. Co-lead is hyphenated. It's not fair, is it,
No,
really?
it isn't. Co-lead.
But I'm afraid you did choose the word lead twice, so that
Oh,
is the
all right.
game. And
And I
Derek
am
got
winning at the
in with
moment.
3 seconds to go, starting now.
The subject is why I am not winning at the moment.
And Derek got a lot of points in that round, including 1 for speaking when the whistle went, so he definitely is winning at the moment. 2 ahead of Jean Marsh, 5 ahead of Peter Jones and Kenneth Williams. Jean, your turn to begin. The subject, Getting the best out of your radio. Can you talk on it for just a minute, starting now?
Getting the best out of your radio is very simple, as long as you buy the Radio Times and the Listener in order to know exactly what's on. And once you have purchased the same journals, flick through the... What?
Derek Nimmo challenge.
Hesitation.
No. Rotten man.
Rubbish.
Rubbish.
Yes, thank you.
47 seconds. To continue, Jean, on getting the best out of your radio, starting now.
The best way to get the best way out of your radio is to switch on at 6:15 twice a week, and then you will hear the most erudite and entertaining programs on the radio. It is on Channel 4, and one night...
Peter Jones's channel.
Nothing is on at 6:15 twice.
It is.
What?
I didn't mean that. I was referring to two separate programs. There's something on at 6:15 every night. And I didn't say listen every night. I meant listen twice a week.
I see, yes,
And
all
if
right.
you listen twice a night, you might get the best ones. Kenneth Williams, by the way, the laugh there was he was consoling Peter Jones beside him by giving him a gentle little chuck under the chin. Jean Marsh, you have another point and 31 seconds for getting the best out of your radio, starting now.
To get the best out of your radio, you must listen to 20 questions, if only to hear Peter Jones' amusing and commanding way with his panel, almost as good as Nicholas Parsons with this. Another evening that you must listen is...
Kenneth Williams.
Deviation. This is just flagrant flattery. I mean, I've never anything like it. She's just getting round the lot of
I
you.
thought it was very
Got round
sound.
me already,
No.
see
Particularly when she
intelligent,
said...
actually.
Yes.
I think, you know, most discerning thing I've ever heard on the programme, actually, for a long time. Didn't care for the first bit about 20 questions, but after that she was... Jean, you continue for 13 seconds on getting the best out of your radio, starting now.
I have 5 radios, and none of them work very well because I'm always having accidents with them. Like one I left in front of the fire and it melted, and I called my father.
Peter Jones's challenge.
That's nothing to do with getting the best
Oh,
out
yes,
of it.
it is.
It's getting the worst out of it, I think.
No,
in front
it
of the
is,
fire.
it is, because I took the best out of each radio, you see, and made one good radio out of them.
Brilliant. I will
were-
do now what I did to Peter recently. I will give Jean Marsh a bonus point for a brilliant wriggle. We'll give Peter a point for a good challenge and the subject, and there are 5 seconds, Peter, with you now on getting the best out of your radio, starting now.
Well, if you can melt it all down and make something else out of it altogether, that's probably the best thing to do.
At the end of that round, Jean Marsh, with her 5 radios and her praise of all the chairmen on radio and everything else, managed to get quite a lot of points, and she's now 1 ahead of Derek Nimmo. Kenneth, it's your turn to begin. The subject is the time I forgot myself in public. Why on earth do this wicked audience laugh so loud at me? Why should they assume that when you forgot yourself in public it was outrageous? I don't know. Anyway, that's the subject, Kenneth. Can you talk on it for just a minute, starting now?
As an actor, the thing you must never forget in yourself is the ability to reproduce the thing which you have retained in your memory bank, so to speak, planted originally by the author. Now, occasionally I have forgotten these precepts, and I call to mind when I should have said, "Are you not moved by action and victory?" That came out as viction and actory. It was done in public, therefore I'm fulfilling what is on the card. That is to say, it must have been witnessed in a place attended by the populace of whatever town one is inhabiting at the period. Question.
Well, something that hasn't happened for quite a long time, by hook or by crook, and by sheer style and determination and doggedness and impersonation and vocal
Dexterity.
Dexterity. And Kenneth Williams kept going for the full 60 seconds, so he gets a bonus point and 2 points.
And I've leapt into the lead, you mean?
You have leapt but you are still in fourth place. But we've had a good measure from you, Kenneth, and so we now move on to Derek Nimmo to begin the next subject, and the subject is a good line. Can you talk on that, Derek, for just a minute, starting now?
A good line is very important if you're going fishing, particularly if it's made of nylon. I think it's terribly good, these new ones that are made, these lines made from that aforementioned material. Because when you throw them in and you catch your salmon on the end, you can bring it up onto the bank and then take it home. It's very important to have a good line. Mind you, one of my favourite lines too is the one that goes from London to Liverpool, railway line. That's where my mummy lives, and she always likes me going home to see her, and I give her a cheery wave and say, "Hello, Mum, here I am again." And she says, "Derek, it's nice. That is, for me, a very good line." Also, of course, one can try and shoot a good line with someone as delectable as Jean Marsh. Everyone's sucking up to everybody tonight, so I must have a go with her now. And to try and do a good line, what I would say to her, "Oh, you tartan-clad beauty, your little damsel from the Highlands, you clever, witty authoress, those lovely linked..."
Jean Marsh has challenged you.
I'm not from the Highlands. It's deviation.
I must point out to our listeners that the reason Derek talked about a tartan-clad beauty was because Jean Marsh is dressed in a tartan. Looks like a Royal Stuart tartan to me. Is it?
Oh, I don't know, dear.
Right, but Jean, I agree with your challenge, so you take over the subject. You have 5 seconds on a good line starting now.
Derek Nimmo's suit has a really excellent line, and my wife doesn't understand it.
And she got the extra point for speaking when the whistle went. She's now got quite a strong lead at the end of that round. She's 4 ahead of Derek Nimmo and 7 ahead of Peter Jones and Kenneth Williams. Peter, your turn to begin. Peter Jones, I don't know whether you are Welsh originally, but we have a subject here, the unpronounceable Welsh names. Can you talk on the subject, about the subject, or in the subject for just a minute, starting now?
I'm died 3 pedwar pwnc mae cliffai Aberdyfi. Now, that's the only bit of Welsh I know, and it isn't a place name. I don't think some of the Welsh people can pronounce the names themselves. And if they can, how can one ever check up? They just blabber on about something, about multi-syllable. I have actually repeated myself, I think.
He's a self-confessed repeater.
I wouldn't confess it, Peter. They'll either may not notice it or they'll be generous and let you get away with it as you have done.
Well, it seemed to be rather boring anyway.
Derek, I agree with your challenge. 34 seconds. Unpronounceable Welsh names starting now.
Well, my Aunt Beatrice, who lives in Prestatyn in North Wales, always teaches me, or tries to teach me, to speak, and I repeat myself too.
My foot slipped on the thing.
Your foot slipped? Is that how you do your buzzer,
my thumb,
on your foot?
Yes. My thumb slipped on the buzzer, No, mistake.
Well, I would just say something. After all, he might have slipped up in some way.
Well, a very funny thing happened to me on my way to the
Well, I would have said a repetition of Aunt Beatrice. She comes into every program. doesn't she?
Oh, yes, all right. I'll repetition of Aunt Beatrice.
Yeah. Well, I'm afraid he hadn't repeated in this round, so...
No, well, then I shouldn't listen to the chairman, of course.
No. Well, Derek, you have 36 seconds to continue on unpronounceable Welsh names starting now.
It's all those L's that make it so difficult, isn't it, really? I can't do it frightfully well, but when I was going once from Bangor to Anglesey, I noticed by the wayside a road sign pointing to the left. I followed the pathway down to this little village, and there was an old man there called Di Jones. Very nice, remarkable old boy, long white moustache, whiskers, very attractive, blue sparkling eyes. Celtic, obviously so. Interesting.
There's one thing, you can manage to keep going so quickly with clarity. Often it's difficult to hear whether the person has repeated themselves or not, which Derek did very admirably. And I'm afraid we have no more time to play just a minute this week, so I will give you the final score. Kenneth finished, alas, in 4th place, even though he did this magnificent piece about... what it was now, but he did it very well.
Forgotten already, you see.
Anyway, and Peter Jones did extremely well, but he was a few points behind Derek Nimmo, but Derek came with a flourish at the end to finish only 1 point behind our guest, who has returned again and triumphed over the 3 chaps, Jean Marsh. We hope you've enjoyed this edition of of just a minute, and we'll want to tune in again. Till then, from all of us here, goodbye.
The chairman of Just a Minute was Nicholas Parsons. The program was devised by Ian Messiter and produced by John Lloyd. We present Kenneth Williams, Derek Nimmo, Peter Jones and Sheila Hancock in Just a Minute. And as the minute waltz fades away, here to tell you about it is our chairman, Nicholas Parsons.
Hello and welcome once again to Just a Minute. And as usual, I will ask our four contestants to talk, if they can, for just a minute on some subject that I will give them without hesitation, without repetition, and without deviating from the subject on the card, if they can. Let's begin the show this week with Kenneth Williams. Kenneth, a lovely subject to start with, my finest hour. Oh, you're smiling already. Would you talk on the subject for just a minute, if you can, starting now?
It raises a whole host of memories revolving in the mind or intellect, depending, of course, on which definition you prefer. But immediately I am present in the great Hagia Sophia and feeling the Byzantine movement pulsing through my entire physical being, envisaging the arrival of Justinian, born in a litter with those great Ethiopian males, lowering it slowly and then stepping forth to cry out, "Solomon, I have beaten you." Because this edifice was greater than anything known.
You all right, dear, in the audience? Peter Jones' challenge. Peter, what was your challenge?
Well, that's not his finest hour. He wasn't there.
I don't think it was his finest hour, by any means. Something to do with
No.
Solomon. No, a lot of other people's finest hour.
Exactly, and the subject is my finest hour.
Yes, I don't think you could justify it by any manner of means. Though it was absolutely fascinating, Kenneth.
Yes.
I think that Peter has a legitimate challenge, so I give
I
him a
don't
point.
think so at all. I think it's most unfair. I really do. It's most unfair. I've come all this way. Thank you.
Well, so do the audience, but I'm afraid you'll have to...
And I want to win!
Why are you making
Week
a
after week.
collection?
Like the milkman said to me, "You never win. You're wasting your time going there." I said, "Don't worry. One day there'll be an..."
Kenneth, just nurse your grievance like a good boy.
Me?
And you'll get back... No, Kenneth. I'm sorry.
Is that what he's doing, nursing his grievance? Good Lord. I don't think we ought to encourage that.
I think we should get on with just a minute. Peter, I agree with your challenge. You get a point for that. You take over the subject. You have 14 seconds. My finest hour starting now.
It was a long time ago, and of course it was during just a minute, and it only took 60 seconds for me to go on talking about the one subject. I remember I got
Sheila
flowers.
Hancock has challenged you.
If it was in just a minute, it couldn't be an hour.
Oh, that's brilliant. He's brilliant. No, we do two programs at the same time.
Sheila, my finest hour, he was using it as an expression, a colloquial phrase. I think your challenge is very clever, so we give you a bonus point for a good challenge. Leave the subject with Peter, who has 5 seconds to continue on my finest hour, starting now.
And it was in two parts because the program is recorded one after the other. And...
Well, the whistle tells us that 60 seconds is up, and whoever's speaking at that moment gets the extra point. On this occasion, it was Peter Jones, who has a lead over everybody else at the end of the first round. Derek Nimmo.
Is he all right?
I'm so sorry. I've been frightfully quiet. I've been sort of, listening.
Exceptionally quiet for you.
Very
yes.
quiet, yes. I won't spoil
Well,
it.
Derek, we're going to hear from you now. The subject for you is getting ready for the holes. can you talk on that subject for just a minute, starting now?
Oh, my goodness, what an excitement it is. Every year when one gets ready for the halls, off comes one's coat, and one gets down to work, unpacking the cases that have been stored up in the loft for a 12th month. And then you open them, and there are mothballs inside and a touch of mildew, and you book your ticket, you go down to the doctor and get your injections in your arm. And then pieces of paper to be acquired from travel agents, phone calls to be made, the milk to be cancelled, the newspapers to be stopped, my little hat that protects me from the rays of the sun to be brought out, my lotion that protects me also from the... I said protect, right, I did.
Repetition of protects.
Yes, you repeated the protect and...
Overprotective.
Yes, overprotected. And Peter, you have a point for the correct challenge. You take over the subject. There are 25 seconds for getting ready for the halls, starting now.
Well, I do much the same as Derek Nimmo, but rather more slowly. And I get the pen out.
Derek Nimmo's challenged.
Hesitation. He does it rather more slowly.
It wasn't slow enough for a hesitation. Well tried, Derek. All right, give him a bonus point. Good challenge.
No, what a good idea.
No,
What are you getting a bonus point for?
Yeah,
Making
I
a
can't
wrong
throw him about
challenge.
today. I'm in that sort of
Makes a
mood.
wrong challenge, you give him a bonus point. Don't you think that's ridiculous,
You
Kenneth?
can't question the authority of the chairman.
Well,
19 seconds, Peter, for you to continue on getting ready for the halls, starting now.
Put the tent up on the lawn and get all those aluminium...
Kenneth Williams has
deviation. If you're going on holiday, you would not put the tent up on your own lawn. That's ridiculous. They're not going on holiday at all.
you were getting
Let's stay
ready,
at home
you
and camp.
would.
You're camping. That's all he's doing is camping. He's camping the whole time, don't you see?
Getting ready.
I think the point in getting ready was he's putting the tent up to see if it still works. I don't think he was deviating from the subject of getting ready for the halls. 16 seconds, Peter, starting now.
You get those aluminium utensils out, give them a polish.
Sheila Hancock challenge.
I think he said aluminium last time.
Sheila has a correct challenge. There are 13 seconds, Sheila, getting ready for the halls, starting now.
I always think getting ready for the holes is considerably more enjoyable than the actual holes, which are a bit of an anticlimax. But you have to get out the cases, prepare your clothes, usually washing and...
On this occasion, Sheila Hancock was speaking when the whistle went. She got the bonus point. She's now in second place behind Peter Jones, who's still in the lead, and Derek Nimmo and Kenneth Williams in third and fourth, respectively. Peter, your turn to begin. The subject, some people. There's a subject which you can take many ways. Can you talk on it for just a minute, starting now?
Well, some people are terribly boring, and they write anonymous letters complaining about the conduct of the chairman in panel games. I've had a few of those, and also some people live abroad, and of course are called foreigners. In fact, most...
Derek Nimmo, challenge.
Repetition, of course.
Of course.
Oh, well, you're not going to pick people up on little things like course.
Well, he's done
course
so,
not.
so if he
No,
can do
no.
it, he gets a point. 43 seconds, Derek, for you on some people, starting now.
Some people are frightfully mean and they challenge people when they say, of course. I don't think this is really a terribly good idea. It smacks of being a bit...
Kenneth Williams, the challenge.
I couldn't understand a word he was saying. It was indecipherable. And he was doing a funny voice. I don't like funny voices.
In other words, he was doing a Kenneth Williams and you object. Derek, you still have the subject. 36 seconds, some people, starting now.
Some people fill me with tremendous admiration, such as Kenneth Williams, when I look across at that giant of literature, that paeans of praise shine from me and fall upon that sun-blessed head, with his auntie sitting in the audience, smiling away, wondering at him, as we all do sometimes. My goodness. Oh, what a splendid chap to call a chum. Dear friend, I say, bon ami, if I was a frog. Otherwise, regrettably, one is endowed with...
Well, Derek, going magnificently then. Sheila, your turn to begin. The subject following some people, other people. Can you talk for just a minute on that, starting now?
Other people on this panel today seem to be a little bit round the twist. I think maybe they have been to the pub before, but I'm not accusing them of it because they are being
Derek Nimmo, challenge.
Deviation? I certainly haven't been to the pub before.
I say
You never
I
said-
want to get the record straight. I don't care whether I lose a point or not, but I'm not going to have it be broadcast to Ceylon and Australia and all sorts of countries. I frequent hostelries before I appear on this program. I just like to get the record straight. I'm sorry.
I don't
care.
mind if everybody in Ceylon knows that I go in a pub now and again.
Yeah, they all know what you drink too. Australian beer is all.
Yes, we get 50 seconds, Sheila, on other people starting now.
If the other people on the panel, however, deny that they have been to that said inn, I will accept that and agree that they perhaps are just a little bit mentally below me. However, I enjoy very much being with these other people, and I find them laudable in many ways. Peter Jones, with his distinguished greying sideboard. Parsons, with his beautiful...
I don't want all the listeners to know that I am going prematurely grey.
Well, shut your row. You're drawing attention to it.
You're underlining it, Sheila.
Underlining it all. Great
You
fool.
have 19 seconds left for other people starting now.
Tie, and Derek in his pink shirt and green the same.
Kenneth Williams,
Hesitation.
challenge. I agree with that,
Yes.
Kenneth. So you have the subject
Well, I
now.
said tie
Have you
just
got an
then.
extra point? And there are 13 seconds on other people starting now.
And a good thing the subject returns to me after this incoherent rambling we've all had to listen to. Jean-Paul Sartre rightly said, hell is other people. This is a definition which I find myself in full agreement.
Well, Kenneth's erudition kept him going.
And I'm in the lead, right?
You've got 2 points in that round.
And that means where? What am I at my position?
You're in 4th place. Kenneth, we're back with you. Can you talk on the subject of the most interesting Louis?
Right.
60 seconds starting now.
The verdict of most historians would have to be Louis XIV, or the Sun King, as he was affectionately known. And one of the most charming anecdotes concerning that monarch was when a lady came to him in deep distress apropos pregnancy and said, "My husband's been away fighting, do you see? And I don't want him to learn of this event." He said, "Madam, I'll make sure that his posting lasts another 6 months." And that, I think, is very nice, because he's, so to speak, engineering a charming pardon for an indiscretion. Would that all kings had this sense of clemency, of tolerance.
Derek Nimmo has challenged.
Repetition of kings.
Yes. I'm afraid there's repetition of kings, so Derek...
That's very
gets-
mean of you, Derek, you know, the way you just seize on these little words.
But you've been going for nearly...
lot of it.
You've been going for nearly 50 seconds, and very well. In fact, you made a very good point about Louis, but now Derek's going to talk on the subject.
I wanted to go on about this woman being pregnant. It was
I
very
know, we've had enough about her being pregnant. I think we can get off her now for a bit, if you
Oh,
don't mind.
pardon me for living.
There are 12 seconds, Derek, for the most interesting Louis, starting now.
His great creation was, of course, the Palace of Versailles, which he turned from his old father's hunting lodge into this most magnificent of buildings, employing Lebrun and Lenotre, his gardener, and painter in reverse order.
The end of that round, Derek Nimmo getting the extra point, speaking with the whistle went, has moved into the lead, 1 ahead of Sheila. Derek, your turn to begin. The subject is little green men. Can you talk about them for just a minute, starting now?
Little green men. What an awfully nice subject to get. Of course, takes one back to prehistoric Britain, I suppose. The barrows, those great mountains built by, perhaps, the little green men. The forerunners of our present British kind.
Sheila Hancock.
What did you say?
You're supposed to be listening.
Well, I was deviating because I couldn't hear it. The forerunners of our
Yeah. I quite agree. I didn't hear at all what it said, so none of us can judge whether he was being devious or repetitious. So the only thing to do, Sheila, we won't charge any points, we'll let him carry on.
Well, not only that, I've got another challenge.
What's your second
I mean,
one?
there's absolutely no proof that the men that lived in the barrows were green.
Yeah.
I mean,
What's your third challenge?
Pardon?
What's your third challenge?
Deviation.
Well, I agree, Sheila, but you didn't bring that one out first. So 45 seconds to continue, Derek, on Little Green Men, starting now.
Because when the Irishmen come to town, they paint the town green, and so right they are.
Kenneth Williams.
Town.
2 times.
Yes, well done, Kenneth. You have the subject and a point. And 42 seconds. The little... No, not the... Little Green Men, starting now.
The little green men only require you to put out a wee bowl of milk in the morning, and then you'll find that all your doings shall be blessed, and you'll have no ill luck or misfortune. And way up in the glens where they still put out the little...
Sheila Hancock, challenge.
To put out.
I was put out by you. You were deliberately making faces. She's making faces at me all through it.
We were all a bit put out by your impersonation.
I was put out by her. She's making faces all the time.
Oh,
Kenneth,
She knows I can't walk
only the
properly. She's
listeners,
laughing at disability.
if only the listeners could have seen your face when you're doing that impersonation.
I thought he might do himself an injury if he went on much longer.
16 seconds for you, Sheila, on Little Green Men, starting now.
The Green family live in Cirencester, and some of them are quite little. There's Edward and George and John. Not more, I should think, than 5 foot 4 inches, but little.
Well, Sheila got an extra point for speaking when the whistle went, and she's now moved into the lead. She's 3 ahead of Peter Jones. No, she's 2. She's only 1 ahead of Derek Nimmo. He's in 2nd place. Peter's now in 3rd place. Kenneth's still in 4th place. But they're all fairly close.
He seems to have been doing quite well. Why is he still only in 4th place?
Because he talks so much when we're not playing the game, you all think he's winning.
Oh, he's Go.
Peter, it's your turn to begin. The subject is speaking loosely. Can you either demonstrate or talk about that subject for just a minute, starting now?
Far too many people are doing this nowadays, even, dare I say it, on programmes broadcast by the BBC. Even in this very programme.
Kenneth Williams challenge.
BB. 2 Bs.
Kenneth, you have a very good challenge, and you have a point, and you have 52 seconds to continue on speaking loosely, starting now.
This means when you're slack-jawed, it's so things without being really articulate, or suffering from gomphosis. Now, there have been many gomphotic creatures, and there are panticulating...
Peter Jones, a challenge.
Repetition of gom.
Oh, give Peter a point for trying hard, and leave the subject with Kenneth, because obviously it's not a correct challenge, but it was a good one. 35 seconds, Kenneth, to continue on speaking loosely, starting now.
In the field of circumlocution, it is with infinite difficulty man finds the accurate phrase with which to properly convey his innermost convictions. Now, when the vocabulary falls into slackness, we tend to label this loose talk or speech. On the contrary, it may often be the verdant outpouring of that which is involuntary, extemporaneous to a degree.
Well, once again, Kenneth kept going well. He spoke a great deal in that round, but I'm afraid he's still in 4th place. Sheila, we're back with you. Your turn to begin. The subject, estimates. Can you talk about estimates for just a minute, starting now?
This is something I feel very strongly about at the moment, as I have been having a house converted. And I advise you, whatever work you have to do, make sure you get an accurate estimate. To the last penny. Otherwise, at the end of the job, you find there is something sinister called extras put on, which means that you are paying usually 5 times as much as you expected. Therefore, you have to get every nail...
Kenneth Williams.
Deviation. She's painting a picture of builders in England as though there are a lot of swindling rogues. I can't stand by and hear a noble profession maligned. I've got chums who are carrying the hod and the mortar and are doing the work, the hard work that goes toward making this country a better place to live in.
Kenneth, you want a cheap estimate for the new house you're doing up in Portland Place, is
I
that?
haven't got house. I've got 1 room, kitchen and bathroom. I run round, shove the arpic down the loo and fly.
You've flown quite enough in this programme. Sheila has another point and 29 seconds to continue on estimates starting now.
I would like to endorse his recommendation of builders because mine happens to be very good because I got one of these said estimates and he stuck to it. But I know many, many people. I got carried away then.
Yes, too many.
Too many.
15 seconds, Derek, on estimates starting now.
Estimate, of course, comes from the Latin word estimatus, a noun, and can be used, as Sheila says so often, by the building trade, and I am suffering from them myself at the moment because they say, we'll build you a room, and when you get the final bill, it doesn't include the roof.
Derek Nimmo got the point for speaking when the whistle went. He's now equal in the lead with Sheila Hancock. Kenneth, we're back with you, and in view of the way the subjects come up, I've just thought it might be fun to throw this one at you. Nursing a grievance. So would you like to talk about nursing a grievance for 60 seconds, starting now?
This is an unhealthy occupation, and the proper resort to these feelings is not in nursing the grievance, but in venting the grievance.
Oh no, I take it back. My finger slipped.
Well, it doesn't matter. He still gets a point for an incorrect challenge. And,
2 grievances.
He's moved out of 4th
Nursing a
place.
grievance. That's the point. That's the title.
I know.
Yes. And you have 47 seconds,
I thought
Kenneth.
you needed a point for the milkman.
No.
Oh, he's going to get his extra pint tomorrow, isn't he? Nursing a grievance, Kenneth. 47 seconds, starting now.
All these things are the result of neurosis of some kind or another with which modern mind is besotted. Now, the answer to this lies in the only way it can be truly remedied, and that is the method of expatiation at the propitious period where naturally the mind resort... What are you doing?
I must tell the listeners, Kenneth looked at me then and said, what are you doing? I was
You were
just
making
carried
faces
away.
at me. You were. You're making faces.
I was deeply impressed.
He dried
with this,
up and he
this
just-
list
I didn't drive. I'm going to go on and on about this. What are you talking about?
I was all this list of long words you kept
I put
bringing
it to
back.
the audience that when people deliberately go, right at you, like...
I
how
put
can
it to
you-
the audience. Wasn't I overcome with admiration?
You pay them to come here.
So, Kenneth, we
When
have
they
18
rehearse.
seconds on nursing a grievance starting now.
I nursed a grievance once, and I was very foolish, and when I faced the person that caused it, he said, oh, my dear fellow, why don't you ring me up? Write a note. I had to come round and we could thrash the whole matter out. That's...
Sheila Hancock challenged.
Hesitation.
Why?
Well, because he ground...
Either that or repetition. Yum, 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 yum.
All right, Sheila, 3 seconds on nursing a grievance starting now.
Nursing a grievance is a foolish...
Well, I've just been told that we have no more time to play Just a Minute, so let me now give you the final score. Peter Jones leapt into a lead at the beginning of the show. He slowly lost it and finished in 4th place. But he, Derek, excuse me. He was only 1 point behind Kenneth Williams, who surged forward with his grievance and finished in 3rd place, 1 point ahead. And they weren't far behind Derek Nimmo, who was in 2nd place, but he was beaten by 2 points by this week's winner, returning to triumph, Sheila Hancock. We hope you've enjoyed this edition of Just a Minute. From all of us here, goodbye.
The chairman of Just a Minute was Nicholas Parsons. The programme was devised by Ian Messiter and produced by John Lloyd. We present Kenneth Williams, Derek Nimmo, Peter Jones and Jean Marsh in Just a Minute. And as the minute waltz fades away, here to tell you about it is our chairman, Nicholas Parsons.
Thank you. Thank you very much indeed. Hello and welcome to Just a Minute. Well, once again, our 4 contestants are going to compete against each other and try and speak for 60 seconds on some subject that I will give them without hesitation, without repetition, and without deviating from the subject on the card if they can. And we'll start the show this week with Peter Jones. And Peter, the subject is making a real fuss. Can you talk on that subject for just a minute, starting now?
Well, not enough people do this. I'd like to encourage it. Now, myself, I only do it, I think, when I'm in a supermarket and I buy about £4 worth of groceries and they want to charge me 3p for a carrier bag. And I resent it and I say, send for the manager, because the poor girl who's at the cash desk, it's not her responsibility, I realise that. But I think it's monstrous that you're not given some assistance to get this junk out of this place. Don't you agree with me? I'm sure
Derek Nimmo challenged.
Well, hesitation just seems to sort of stop.
No, he was asking for our opinion.
Yes, I thought.
He was asking for Kenneth's opinion, but Kenneth, instead of pressing his buzzer and challenging him, he decided to agree, yes. But Derek got in first with the challenge, and Derek, I agree with your challenge. He did hesitate, so you gain a point for that. You take over the subject. There are 25 seconds left. Making a real fuss, starting now.
Yes, we are far too complacent in this country today. I would like to make a fuss in my borough because the cleaning of the street is absolutely disgraceful. There are old tin cans, bits of paper, all kinds of muck lying around the pavement, and nobody comes along and moves it away. My dustbins are not emptied. The council are lethargic. What's the matter? Who ran? Got a lot of words in, didn't I? A lot of words.
Two dustbins.
No, he's used the dust cart before, and dustbin.
Oh,
it's very difficult when he goes at that
yes.
pace, but he often trips himself up, so we can get him on. Derek, I disagree with Jean's challenge, so you have a point for an incorrect challenge. You keep the subject. There are 10 seconds left, making a real fuss, starting now.
Sometimes after matins, you'll find people will come up and make a real fuss about the sermon and say, today, Vicar, it was rather boring. I do not like the text that you took.
The whistle tells us that 60 seconds is up, and whoever is speaking at that moment gains an extra point. At the end of that round, it was Derek Nimmo. In fact, Derek Nimmo got all the points in that round. He has a lead of 3 over all the other 3 competitors. Derek, it is your turn, so will you continue now with the next round? When it's my turn on the bumper cars. That is the subject. Will you talk on it for just a minute? You start now.
When it's my turn on the bumper cars, I like to make a real fuss. It is great fun, isn't it, to get rid of all your inhibitions when you're on the bumper cars. All those times that you spend on the roadway locked in traffic jams, and you get in your little bumper car and you can go the wrong way round and bash everybody. Such fun, isn't it? I like it. And I'm rude to people. I shout, "What-ho, sucks to you!" I must be quite honest. No, I'm sorry. I must reveal onto you the sort of cad that I really have. Somebody buzzed.
Yes, Kenneth Williams.
I must be honest, I must reveal. You did say it twice.
Yes. 33 seconds on when it's my turn on the bumper cars, starting now.
When it's my turn on the bumper cars, I only hope that I get it to myself, because sometimes if you're with a companion, they do insist on sharing the seat. Now, I find this very restricting, because I like to be able to wrench the wheel round at will and do all those terrible things that you could never do in any other place. I also think that the sparks that are given off are quite frightening.
Peter Jones's challenge.
A repetition of think.
Yes, you were thinking rather a lot. You are, of course, must think a lot, but you mustn't use the word more than once. 6 seconds are left, Peter Jones, and you have the subject now. When it's my turn on the bumper cars, starting now.
When it's my turn on the bumper cars, I just look the other way because I get enough bumps in Oxford Street, Regent Street, and Point West.
It's a good thing the whistle went on Regent Street, wasn't it?
Yeah.
Well, I said
continue,
Point
continue.
West, I said, and then I was going to go right
know,
through
but-
the whole metropolitan area, naming every street by street, Crescent, Terrace, and Mews.
Repetition.
But you wouldn't have got any further than that moment because you said street twice.
I buzzed him on the
and
second
Jean
street.
buzzed, but it was just after the whistle went, so you were
Well, I
lucky.
say Crescent, Terrace, Mews, and all
But you
those,
still said
see.
street twice.
Anyway,
but
what's the point of saying what I would have done?
You've done it!
Conjecturing! You know,
got
you're
in just
trying.
in
I
time.
don't often win a point, and when I win it, you say, "Oh, it's just as well the whistle." I mean, how appalling! What a depressing man!
Peter, can you... You make a very good chairman, you know, actually, Peter.
Thanks very
You
much.
have a point then for speaking when the whistle went, and you're in second place at the end of that round. 1 point behind Derek Nimmo. And Kenneth, it's your turn to begin, and the subject is what I put in my faggots. Will you talk about that if you can for 60 seconds, starting now?
What I put in my faggots must remain a secret. It's something I cannot possibly discuss. I do it undercover. I do it with the blinds down. I do it when nobody's about.
Derek Nimmo challenge.
He's done it too many times.
Well, you have to with faggots, dear.
Well, you can't do it 3 times in a row like that. Derek, I agree with the challenge, and you have 45 seconds to continue on what I put in my faggots, starting now.
What I put in my faggots, I'd be delighted to tell you all about. I wouldn't do it under sheets and in the darkness. I put meat, lovely, delicious, raw flesh combined with barley and congealed black blood and a little tiny touch of parsley and some green beans chopped very fine with some tarragon and herbs.
Now,
a little strawberry jam.
Jean Marsh is
gives-
challenged.
Little.
Yes, you had lots of littles before. Jean, you got him this time. You have 5 seconds on what I put in my faggots, starting now.
First, you must get a bladder, which is the inside of a pig. You stretch it and then start to stuff it.
Well, that was one of the most vulgar subjects we've had on our programme, and they all got some points from it, and Derek Nimmo's still in the lead. Jean Marsh, will you begin the next round? The subject is onions. Can you talk on that subject without breathing? And there is just a minute, starting now.
I put a lot of chopped onions into my faggots, of course. But apart from that, onions are an extremely beneficial vegetable to mankind. They're not only delicious to eat, cooked or raw, but actually do you good medicinally. They are very, very 5.
Peter Jones's challenge.
Tradition of very.
Yes, very obviously.
All sorts of things.
And there are 43 seconds for onions with you, Peter, starting now.
Now, first, take the onion and peel the outside skin off, and then chop it across. Then turn it at right angles, chop it again.
Jean Marsh's challenge. Chop. It's too much chop there, yes. 34 seconds, Jean, on onions, starting now.
I've got a very good tip for the listeners. If you want to eat onions a lot and don't want to taste or smell of them, you must eat about 100 at one sitting, and by so doing,
Kenneth Williams' challenge, what was it for?
Well, it's to eat twice.
I know she did, so
it's
you
true.
have a point for that. And there are 23 seconds on onions, starting now.
If you want a good tip about onions, the way to come up without crying is to put a matchstick in your mouth while you're doing it. Now, none of you knew that, did you?
Peter Jones's challenge.
I told him that the other day.
I'm a witness.
He's using my material.
Give Peter Jones a bonus point
It's a
for a
little
good challenge. The subject stays with Kenneth. He has 15 seconds on onions, starting now.
It is, of course, an odour, the onion one, which we all object to if we
Jean
ourselves...
Marsh's challenge.
I don't object to it at all.
You hadn't heard the rest of my sentence?
But
You
he
said we
wasn't...
all object.
And then I was
don't
going to
object
say,
it.
if we haven't had it ourselves.
Jean, I don't think he was deviating from the subject of onions, and so he keeps it, and there are 8 seconds, starting now.
Pooh, what a stink, I have often cried when I have smelled this aroma on the breath of an itinerant peddler. I don't... You don't know what it means?
Kenneth, you got a point for speaking when the whistle went, but I'm afraid you're still 1 point behind our leader, who is still Derek Nimmo. Peter Jones is alongside you in second place, and Jean's only 1 point behind. And Peter, it's your turn to begin. Oh, there's a lovely subject here, and you're going to give me a lot of problems too. This is a recording of my voice, is the subject. Can you talk on that for just a minute, starting now?
This is a recording of my voice. Well, I suppose it is. I remember the first time I recorded my voice on the pier at Llandudno.
Derek Nimmo's challenge.
Well, deviation at this particular moment in time, it's not a recording of his voice. He's speaking live.
Yes, but he said, I remember the first time I recorded
No, he said,
my voice.
this is a recording of my voice. It isn't.
It is by the time he's finished saying it. Definitely. Because
As he says it, it is a recording of his voice.
Anyway, that is
I don't
the
understand your
subject.
challenge.
That's the subject.
Yes, and I disagree with Derek's challenge, so you have a point, Peter, and you have 50 seconds to continue, starting now.
I went into this little place like a telephone box and made an aluminium disc, and we took it home, put it on the record player with a wooden needle, if you please, because it might have scraped it, or scarred it, wouldn't have been able to hear.
Peter Kenneth Williams' challenge.
Deviation, is there a wooden needle, if you please? Well, it doesn't please me at all, so...
Well, that was a figure of speech. You could have had him on deviation when he said he went in and made a metal disc.
That's what I meant. That's it. Make a metal disc. Make it, yes.
The metal disc was made when he went in there. You're too late now, Kenneth. No, I mustn't give you challenges. Peter, you have a point for an incorrect challenge, and you have 38 seconds to continue on. This is a recording of my voice, starting now.
And then another time, I remember when the first tape recorders came in, they were enormously heavy things and very difficult to move about. And I got one onto the third floor with the aid of a
Jean
friend.
Marsh has challenged.
I honestly don't see what that's got to do with this is a recording of my voice.
Well, how else do you make one without the tape recorder that he was trying to wield about
No,
the
he
house?
was just telling us a very old tale about how heavy recording machines were years
Yes,
ago.
it's very difficult because,
It's not difficult at all. It's perfectly relevant. What are you talking about, you great nit?
Kenneth Williams, you
Oh,
haven't
get
come
on
all the
with
way
these
from
procedural
Portland Place to
wrangles.
call your chairman a great
Oh, I
nit.
beg your pardon. That was a figure of
little
speech.
nit.
Not
Jean, I will agree with your challenge. You have 27 seconds on This is a recording of my voice, starting now.
This is a recording of my voice reciting a sonnet of Shakespeare. When in the chronicles of wasted time I see descriptions of the
Kenneth
fairest
Williams'
wights.
challenge.
Well, this is disgraceful. I mean, it's deviation.
It is
The
what?
subject, this is a recording of my voice, and now she's gone
That's
off
what I
about
was doing. I
Shakespeare
was
and
recording
reciting.
my voice.
That's nothing to do with recording. This is a
You'd have
recording.
liked it.
Kenneth, you haven't spoken on the subject, so you take it over, and you have 20 seconds on This is a recording of my voice, starting now.
This is a recording of my voice is something I don't like hearing. I want always to be hearing live.
Derek Nimmo.
Repetition of hearing.
Yes. All right. I know you're keen. Derek, I agree with the challenge. There are 13 seconds on. This is a recording of my voice starting now.
I mean, I think the most frightful job that anybody's ever had in the whole wide world is that poor girl who does the time thing. You know, this is a recording of my voice. When she has...
Jean Marsh's challenge.
She doesn't say this is a recording of my voice.
No.
Oh, no, but for her, that is the subject, isn't it, if you think about it?
No, but you said it as if she said it, and she
no,
doesn't.
she doesn't say it.
Well, if she'd have been playing Just a
You
Minute...
almost said it in parentheses.
No, I think Jean Marsh's challenge is very good. It's almost difficult, as I said before, to judge, but I would give Jean the benefit here of the doubt and say she has 4 seconds on. This is a recording of my voice starting now.
And did those feet in ancient times...
You see, it's impossible because, again, that was a recording of her voice because the programme is recorded.
Listen, I quite like you to scrub it out, actually.
Ian Messiter, who keeps the score, for those who write to me and say, I don't know how to keep the score, has just pointed out to me that at the end of that round, as they all got some points, the situation is that they are all equal. It's never happened before. And we continue with Derek Nimmo, and the subject is hags. No, I must put my glasses on. It's bags. I'm so sorry. Derek, can you talk on bags for 60 seconds, starting now?
I suppose if one is asked to talk bags, one immediately might think about scrubbers from Stoke Newton. But I won't, of course. I'll think about the ones that might contain flour.
Kenneth Williams has challenged.
Deviation. He said we're all going to think this. Well, I don't think that immediately at all. So therefore, you're devious in suggesting that this is a general assumption made when this word is mentioned.
No, I didn't say
Well,
that.
Kenneth, when Jean Marsh challenged you on a collective noun of we all, I didn't allow it, so I'm afraid I can't allow it to you now.
Then I must give way.
Oh! You have no option once the chairman's made a decision. Until Derek, he has 58 seconds to continue. I'm sorry, you have 53 seconds to continue on bags, Derek, starting now.
With the film of The Great Gatsby, people are now wearing Oxford bags, that is, great big floppy trousers that envelop your shoes and look terribly ugly, but everyone's at it, all wearing bags. And can be de-bagged? I remember at school having my trousers removed and being left in a bed of nettles by some vile boys who all perpetrated this fateful company. They left me there stung all round my nether regions. Most unpleasant it was, and other places as well. I don't want to talk about those, but bags can contain things like oranges. Now, from Seville, can you imagine a ship unloading bags of fruit, and there's little children rushing towards them, picking off the leaves, and juicing and chumping through them, taking out the pips, spitting them in all directions.
Jean Marsh is challenged.
I can't imagine little children crashing to the boat dockside.
Yes, and little bird-sailing bags they are.
Well, how do they get them out of the bags?
You ask. You listen now.
There are people, there are men, I can't remember
No,
what
I
they're
agree with
called.
Jean's challenge. You've gone back to Seville. You were thinking of the children in Seville rushing up.
Mention Seville.
Do I have to sit here next time? It's ever so dangerous.
It's very dangerous, isn't it? The way he
I
waves
get
his arms
attacked
about.
and
Yes.
spat at and all sorts of things.
You're
very free-wheeling.
I will explain to the listeners, I must explain to the listeners that when Derek really starts going on a subject is then he waves his arms about, he throws his legs in the air, he shows off his Oxford bags, and it's quite dangerous for somebody sitting there. Jean Marsh, you have the subject now of bags. There are 10 seconds left, starting now.
I'm not a bad-looking woman for my age, but I have to confess that I've got bags.
Derek Nimmo has challenged.
I think she's a rotten-looking woman for her age.
I would give her a point to Jean Marsh for ungallantry if...
Thank you.
But she wins it legitimately in the 6 seconds on bags. Jean starting now.
As I say, I do have bags and...
Peter Jones has challenged.
Well, she's just repeated herself. She said, as I say, I just have to have
But
bags.
I hadn't said as I say before.
No, but you were about to repeat yourself.
No,
so
I was only about
bags
to
is the
repeat
subject
bags.
here, so
Bags
she
is
wasn't
the
repeating
subject.
herself.
Peter Jones has the subject, and there are 4 seconds on bags, Peter, starting now.
Well, there are all kinds of them all over the place. You can't really
Jean
move
Marsh
for them.
has challenged.
3 alls.
There are all kinds of them all over the place. Well done, Jean. You have 2 seconds on bags, starting now.
But I'd still rather have my bag than anybody else's.
Well, Jean Marsh was with us a while ago, and she doesn't appear regularly on our programme. She's our guest in the 4th chair. She did tremendously well. You may have listened or heard it. And She won, but she's now, looks like, maybe repeating her performance. She's 3 points ahead of our other 3 male contestants. Kenneth Williams, it's your turn to begin. The subject is Sinbad the Sailor. Will you talk about Sinbad the Sailor for just a minute if you can, starting now?
Well, of course, the original is Sinbad, which is one of the characters in this Arabian Nights rubbish that went on.
48 arms.
Yes. Derek Nimmo, you have the subject and you have 50 seconds on Sinbad the Sailor, starting
Sinbad the Sailor, the very first pantomime I went to see, Dorothy Ward playing the principal boy at the Pavilion Theatre, Liverpool. Gosh, those legs, magnificent. Do you know, I saw the other day, not playing Sinbad the Sailor this time.
Kenneth Williams is
Deviation. This lady's legs are not relevant. There's nothing to do with Sinbad the Sailor. Dorothy Ward's legs are far, far removed from Sinbad the Sailor.
Well, all I can say is that when Dorothy Ward played Sinbad the Sailor, her
We're
legs
not
were
interested in all that rubbish.
Well, her legs were an integral part of her performance, as that's one of the reasons she was cast as the principal boy in the pantomime. So I think Derek's perfectly legitimate. Yeah. And he keeps the subject, and there are 42 seconds left on Sinbad the Sailor, starting now.
So I went in to see Sinbad the Sailor, clutching in my hand a lollipop and some dolly mixtures, and I sat with my Aunt Frida, new member of the program. You haven't heard about her before. And we sat and watched Sinbad the Sailor. The great red curtain went up, and onto the stage came 48 little tartan-clad scrubbers from New England. And they all sang the jolly song, "We are the Sinbad Boys."
Kenneth has challenged you.
Well, it's a disgrace. What are these scrubbers doing in the middle of Sinbad the Sailor?
Oh, no,
I agree. I do not believe that pantomime with Dorothy Ward opened with 40 little scrubbers.
Honestly, I'm afraid I have got to back Derek Nimmo up, because when I was a young scrubber from Stokington, I was a tiny tapper, and I did actually do that.
You weren't in this pantomime with Dorothy Ward, so such a great
I wasn't in that one. It is possible.
I still don't believe there were 48 tartan-clad little scrubbers opening the show with
It's
Dorothy
possible.
Ward.
Where was this? I didn't hear.
Pavilion Theatre, Liverpool.
Have we got time to phone Dorothy Ward and ask her? Kenneth, I agree with your challenge, and you take over the subject, and there are 12 seconds on Sinbad the Sailor, starting now.
He's a character in these Disney films who used to eat a lot of spinach and
Peter Jones has challenged.
No, that's Popeye you're thinking of.
Yes.
Well, who was Sinbad? What did Sinbad the Sailor eat then?
No, and they weren't even Disney films. They were made by another company.
Oh, I see. I thought it was Popeye the Sailor Man.
Yes.
I thought that was it.
Yes, but it's not Sinbad the Sailor.
You're getting muddled with your olive oil.
That is true. That is true, but as one about to reach his journey's end, I'm afraid memory is playing me strange tricks.
Yes. We've noticed it, Kenneth. Peter Jones, a good point to you, and 5 seconds on Sinbad the Sailor, starting now.
Well, he used to go to sea on this raft and have a bottle of wine, and girls used to climb up.
At the end of that round, Peter Jones gained another point for speaking when the whistle went. He's now in second place with Derek Nimmo behind Jean Marsh, who's still our leader. And Jean, it is your turn to begin the subject, my proudest moment. Can you talk on that for just a minute, starting now?
My proudest moment happened only a few days ago. I was in my country cottage. The telephone went. I answered. A voice said, "This is the BBC. Ian Messiter wants to speak to you." I said, "Lord above, what can he want?" And soon he told me.
Derek Nimmo has challenged.
Ian Messiter is not the Lord above.
It was an expletive. Which should have been deleted, I suppose.
No. We give Derek a bonus point for a good challenge, but we leave the subject with you because you weren't deviating. And you have 45 seconds to continue on my proudest moment, starting now.
He told me that he wanted my presence on this panel show.
Kenneth Williams has challenged.
He didn't ring her up and say he wanted her presence on the panel show, so I can vouch for that. It's complete lies. Therefore, it's deviation, and I should take the subject over.
It is true.
Actually,
he didn't. He said he wanted your voice on the programme. He didn't say
He
wanted your
didn't.
presence.
Well,
It was
actually,
the
he's the one who
producer
asked
who
Ian.
telephoned us, so it was deviation.
Well, she said it was.
That's right. That's what I meant. That's right. Absolutely. Yeah.
So, Kenneth, you have 42 seconds to continue on my proudest
Thank
moment,
you very
starting
much.
now.
My proudest moment was when I donned the uniform of the Sea Cadet Corps. I stood there resplendent in the bell-bottoms with a hat and gold lettering upon it. and strode proudly through the streets of the borough of Marylebone, or Marylebone, as some people term it. We went to this marvellous service where all of us were told about the duties incumbent upon sea cadets. And I remember learning...
Derek Nimmo's challenged.
Repetition Sea Cadets.
Yes, we've had the sea
Oh,
cadets
yes.
before.
Oh, well, I did look lovely in the uniform.
Derek, you have taken over the subject. You have 5 seconds. We're coming to the end of the last round now, and you are 1 point behind our leader. 5 seconds to go on my proudest moment starting...
My proudest moment was when I was made a senior sixer by R.K. Large.
Well, Derek managed to keep going for the 5 seconds, so he got the bonus point for speaking when the whistle went. And as I just told you, we'd come to the end of the show. So the final score is that Peter Jones has challenged.
No, I haven't.
You just pressed your buzzer.
Oh, I'm sorry.
Must have been that
That
loose
was,
foot of yours again that you were talking about. A very, very close contest. Kenneth Williams was in 4th place, but he was only 1 point behind Peter Jones in 3rd place. And Peter Jones was only 1 point behind our joint winners this week, Derek Nimmo, and once again, returning to triumph, Jean Marsh. We hope you've enjoyed this edition of Just a Minute. From all of us here, goodbye.
The chairman of Just a Minute was Nicholas Parsons. The programme was devised by Ian Messiter and produced by John Lloyd. We present Derek Nimmo, Clement Freud, Peter Jones and Barry Cryer in Just a Minute. And as the minute waltz fades away, here to tell you about it is our chairman, Nicholas Parsons.
Thank you. Thank you very much indeed. Hello and welcome to Just a Minute. And as you've heard, we welcome to the programme for the first time Barry Cryer. And so best of luck, Barry. You'll find it's pretty tough once they get the bit between their teeth, but I hope you make some points as I ask them all to speak for just a minute if they can on some subject or word or phrase that I will give them without hesitation, without repetition, and without deviating from the subject on the card. And this week we'll begin the show with Derek Nimmo. Derek, can you talk on the subject of streaking? Don't demonstrate, just talk. 60 seconds, starting now.
Of course, all part of the decline of the standards of the BBC, isn't it? One should be asked to speak on a subject like this for the first time on this programme. It really is quite appalling how words change their meanings, isn't it, really? And when I was a boy, a crumpet was a bum.
Peter Jones has challenged.
Repetition of really.
Yes, you did say really twice. Peter, you have the subject, you have a point for a correct challenge, and there are 47 seconds left, starting now.
I've always thought that radio was the perfect medium for streaking. I've never been invited to do it, actually, but I am contemplating taking it up or down, as the case may be. I don't know whether listeners would enjoy commentary from perhaps the chairman if I take off my jacket to start...
And Derek Nimmo's challenge.
Hesitation,
Yes, I did hear it, Derek, and I agree with your challenge, so you get a point for a correct challenge and the subject, and you have 30 seconds for streaking. Starting now.
One spring morning, I was streaking through Wintergrade Park with only a bowler hat on my head, and a policeman rushed up to me with his truncheon, and getting his helmet off, he...
Clement Freud has challenged.
Good evening.
Clement Freud.
Deviation.
Why?
A truncheon while you're streaking is very nasty.
You're trying very hard, Clement, but not succeeding.
Oh, you don't agree?
No, I disagree entirely, because the policeman could rush up with his truncheon, and what he does with it, we might hear. And, Derek, you have a point. For an incorrect challenge, you keep the subject of streaking, and there are 21 seconds left, starting now.
I painted the wall a very pale shade of green, and then started streaking it with blue to give it a jaspy effect. This I found to be particularly attractive, and so did my wife. Auntie Edna did not care for it quite so much, and said that she preferred...
Peter Jones is challenged.
What happened in Windsor Great Park? We'd missed all that just as the policeman was approaching with a truncheon. He left us in midair.
I know. He thought it was probably wiser to do so, considering what was happening in Windsor Great Park. Your challenge, then, Peter?
Is deviation. He's deviated from the
Windsor
point.
Great Park.
Yes.
But he hasn't deviated from streaking, so he gets a point for an incorrect challenge, and he keeps the subject, and there are 3 seconds left, starting now.
Amongst all the trees in the nut, there I was. What ho! I shouted, my goodness me.
The whistle, which Ambassador blows for us, tells us that 60 seconds is up, and whoever is speaking at that particular moment gets an extra point. It was Derek Nimmo. So, at the end of the first round, Derek's taken a commanding lead. He has 4 points. Peter Jones has 1, and the others have yet to score. And Clement Freud, will you take the second round? The subject, spending £1 million. Can you talk about that in 60 seconds, starting now?
£1 million used to be considered a very great deal of money. But lately...
Derek Nimmo's challenge.
Deviation, I still consider it to be a great deal of money.
He was not deviating because it was also in the past considered a great deal of money. So he had a point for a wrong challenge, and he keeps the subject, and there are 55 seconds left, starting now.
But now it's a mere bagatelle. A farthing on a loaf for 2 weeks would look after that sort of money. And recently, with £1 million, I was able to go and streak. And the only people who recognized me were those who had bought my clothes. What am I talking about?
Talking about streaking.
I was waiting for someone to...
Derek,
About hesitation and deviation.
Yes, and nearly everything, I would have thought. And Derek, a point for a right challenge, 25 seconds for spending £1 million, starting now.
Oh, I'd love to spend £1 million. I'd give Nicholas Parsons a long-term contract in Hollywood so we'd never see him again. That'd be very good way to spend at least £50 of it, I suppose, really. But when one thinks of a vast sum of money like this, one imagines desert islands that you could buy, lovely maidens to go on them, palm trees, the sun shining every day of the year, and blue lagoons, and little tiny crustaceans. I do like shrimps.
Well, once again, Derek Nimmo was speaking when the whistle went, so he gained an extra point for that, and he has increased his lead at the end of that round. And Barry Crowd, it's your turn to begin. What's it like the first time? 60 seconds, starting now.
What's it like the first time? The beauty of this subject and discoursing thereon is that one cannot be accused of repetition because the first time is totally unlike the second is not like the third, and the third is dissimilar from the fourth.
Derek Nimmo has challenged.
Repetition of second, and then repetition of third, and so
How can you... I didn't repeat the word second. I said second, third, and fourth.
I know you didn't.
I didn't say...
It's not like the second time, the third is not... The third, you did, actually.
Help me, Uncle Nicholas.
No, the second time is not like the...
Second time.
The
The
first
third
time.
is not like...
I didn't say time each time, though, did I,
Not the
Uncle
first
Nicholas?
time.
But this is the first time he's been on the programme.
Yes.
So he gets a point for that challenge of yours. First time he's actually spoken, so he has 50 seconds with a point to your credit, Barry, on what's it like the first time, starting now.
Quite a heart-rending occasion, I do remember. The first time I ever had to cook for myself, living in a bed-sitter, I decided to make some soup, so I obtained a tin of soup, which, of course...
Derek Nimmo has challenged.
Soup! 2 soups.
Yes, I think such a definite thing as soup we couldn't allow to go twice.
The soup is not that definite. I mean, he didn't say what kind of... Soup is a pretty sort of generic...
I was about to say
but you haven't seen the
superb.
sort of soup that Barry Crowd serves up. So, Barry, I disagree. I mean, I agree with Derek's challenge, so he gets a point for that, and 41 seconds on What's It Like the First Time, Derek, starting
well, for
now.
me, it wasn't very good the first time, as I remember it. The trouble was that she couldn't take it down quickly enough. That's always the difficulty when you're engaging a new typist. Their speed is sometimes rather slow. In case you were thinking that I was talking about something quite different, I would like to reassure you on that point. But now she's been with me for these many years.
Barry Cry.
A certain amount of deviation. Where's the relevance to the first time now in this discourse?
I was just going to go back to the first time.
Yes. Too late. Yes, quite right, Barry.
Thank
quite
you,
right.
Peter.
It's a very good
Thank you.
intervention.
You got the check, did you?
Yes.
Does the audience agree with Barry's challenge?
Yeah.
Their superior wisdom is always what counts in this program, so I bow to that and say, Barry, you have a point for a good challenge, and 21 seconds on What's It Like the First Time, starting now.
I shall continue my discourse about the broth I was attempting to boil, and I did in fact suffer severe scalding due to this, because the directions on top of the aforementioned tin said pierce the top and then stand in boiling water.
Derek Nimmo.
Tin soup and then...
No, he never said a tin. It was a soup before.
Never said. I said broth this time.
No, but tin soup was in the first time, actually.
Oh, Barry Crow's got another point, and there are 9 seconds left on What's It Like the First Time, starting now.
And as I understand it, the joke was you stood in the boiling water.
Thank you, Peter.
What? Is that right?
Thank you. It is entirely correct.
Yes, I do think one or two people missed that.
They did.
Well, would you like to go round and tell every member of the audience every time? We'll send a little note round next time. Anyway, Barry, you've lost 2 seconds because Ian Messiter kept the watch going while... you gained 2 seconds, whichever way you want to look at it. So there's now only 7 seconds on What's It Like the First Time, starting now.
The first time I sampled
I'm only trying to make him feel at home.
Yes, thank you, Peter.
After all,
indeed.
from his description, it's a pretty modest place.
You're a topser.
Well, on that occasion, Peter Jones is speaking when the whistle went, and Barry Cry gets an extra point. Because Barry had the subject, you'll realise that. Derek, your turn to begin. The subject is kicking off. Would you like to talk about that? 60 seconds, starting now.
There are all kinds of things that you can kick off, aren't there? Really? I particularly like kicking off my traces, whatever they might be. But it's rather good fun, isn't it? You know, a red letter day, a night out with the boys, on the town. There you go, from hostelry to public house, rushing around, quaffing ale.
Barry Cry.
There's a deviation. You kick over traces,
I was
not
going to
off.
say, I thought I was surprised.
I was
somebody
kicking
noticed.
mine off.
Well, I think the correct phrase is kicking over the traces and not kicking them off. So, Barry, I agree with your challenge, which was rather late, but still it's valid. 44 seconds on kicking off, starting now.
There are many senses of the term kicking off. There is the football connotation of the term kicking off. There is the...
Clement Freud is challenged.
Repetition. Term.
Yes, you're correct, Clement.
That's entirely correct.
You have a point and the subject, and there are 35 seconds left, kicking off, starting now.
Perhaps the most usual method of kicking off occurs at association football matches, and quite particularly at Wembley Stadium, where eclectic games such as the Cup Final and Internationals are often performed in front of great audiences, often reaching 100,000.
And Peter Jones is challenged.
Repetition of often.
Yes, I quite agree, and it was so quiet, the audience almost
I
got
can't hear it all over here.
I wasn't talking.
Well, Peter, do you think you could wake them up with a little bit more enthusiasm about the subject? And there are 17 seconds left for kicking off, starting now.
I think beer is one of the most refreshing drinks that I've ever enjoyed. The lager beer from Denmark or
And
Germany,
Clement Freud is
Australia.
Repetition of beer.
Yes, I'm afraid there was. So Clement has the subject back to another point. 11 seconds kicking off, Clement, starting now.
The old-time centre-forward, now known as striker, tends to pass the ball to the...
Derek Nimmo.
No, he's now known as Streaker. We've established that earlier.
He may streak as well, but he's also known as striker, so it's a wrong challenge. And Clement has 5.5 seconds on kicking off, starting now.
At which the inside left used to give the ball back to the centre half.
Clement Freud was then streaking when the whistle went. Kicking off when speaking when the whistle went. Derek Nimmo is still in the lead. He's 2 points ahead of Clement Freud, who's 1 point ahead of Barry Crowd, did very well in the last round. And Clement Freud, your turn to begin. And the subject, Pontefract. Can you talk about Pontefract in 60 seconds, starting now?
I once went to Pontefract races, and a clergyman came up to me and said, "Excuse me, Mr. Freud, you are very well known in Pontefract." And I was fascinated by this and said, "How am I in Redcar?" And he said, "Practically unheard of." Since when, I haven't enjoyed Yorkshire as much as I might have done, but horse...
Derek Nimmo's
Hesitation.
Hesitation is correct, Derek. You have a point and the subject and 37 seconds on Pontefract, starting now.
Bath buns and Pontefract cakes. How I adore them. On a Tuesday morning in July.
Peter Jones has challenged.
Who did that?
Deviation, he's talking about Bath buns.
But he put them alongside the cakes, which come from Pontefract.
Yes, but he's supposed to be talking about Pontefract cakes, not Bath buns and Pontefract cakes.
No, he's supposed to be talking about Pontefract. Derek, I disagree with the challenge, so you keep the subject, and there are 32 seconds on Pontefract, starting now.
I once met a lady called Jungle Mary who lived in Pontefract. She was a very curious sort of woman, really. She had black hair and used to wear ginger frocks, always of that particular shade of red, which I find
Clement
particularly...
Hesitation.
Yes, a stumble which can be interpreted as hesitation, so 20 seconds left for Pontefract with you, Clement, starting now.
The derivation of that town is, of course, pont from the French bridge to Efract, which was a river running in a southwesterly direction, totally tidal and emanating from a lake.
Derek Nimmo's challenge.
Deviation is not true. It's not tidal. It's not going to any lake.
Well, Derek, I agree with your challenge, and there are 6 seconds on Pontefract, starting now.
It is a very handsome town. I do like going there, particularly the railway station. I find most agreeable because the trains, when they stop there, they're always so courteous and people are very polite to you, and they give you cakes, and Nicholas's 84-year-old mother's always there to meet you.
On this occasion, Derek Nimmo was speaking well beyond when the whistle went, and he doesn't get anything extra for it. It was just as boring as what he says before the whistle goes. Peter Jones, your turn to begin. The subject is bedtime.
Oh.
Can you talk about... Don't be like that, please, Derek. Bedtime is with you now, Peter. 60 seconds, starting now.
Well, how we think of bedtime, which is one of my favorites, it depends to a great extent on our age. When we're children, we cannot put off the evil moment.
Derek Nimmo has challenged.
Hesitation.
Hesitation on the evil moment, yes. There are 48 seconds on bedtime with you, Derek, starting now.
Well, here we are again. What was it like for the first time that we went to bed?
Peter Jones has challenged.
He's adding up all the other previous subjects, and that's not on. I mean, that's, that's just boring. I mean, more boring than it was the first time.
Yeah.
Challenge is deviation.
Awfully good.
Why?
Because he's talking about...
You can't even remember.
what it's like the first time and all
I'm
that sort of
glad
thing,
you
you see. He's
remembered
supposed to be
that.
talking about bedtime.
Yes.
I'd support that challenge.
Thank you very much.
I must say the connotation is pretty obvious. Peter, you have the subject, and there are 43 seconds on bedtime starting now.
Well, as I was saying, then we first get married.
Clement Freud has challenged.
Repetition, if it's
As I was saying.
Well, that's
what I was saying.
But
no,
he
it
didn't
isn't.
say anything repetitious. He was using a phrase which was repetitious, but as he was not repeating anything that he'd said before, he keeps the subject with a point, and it is bedtime. 41 seconds, Peter, starting now.
And then for the first weeks after the wedding, one cannot get to bed soon enough. For instance, as soon as tea time is over, then there's a streak up the stairs, and...
Derek Nimmo has challenged.
Well, he's talking about a previous subject like streaking, and I was there. It's a new rule.
He didn't... The previous subject actually was streaking, and he used the word streak. And it fitted in very well with the situation, so I don't think for a minute that you could call it deviation. Peter, you have another point for an incorrect challenge, and you have 28 seconds on bedtime, starting now.
sometimes coming down again for news at 10. Then a glass of Ovaltine or some such drink. I should have said, I shouldn't be advertising it. Not that probably a lot of people rush out to buy it just because I mentioned the word.
The repetition of rush, apart from anything else.
Yes, apart from anything else. Yes.
What do you mean, apart from anything else? I don't like that. Well, that's a slur, a smear.
Well, it was intentional because I think you were well deviating from the subject. But I will accept the rush as a repetition, and the subject is now back with you, Derek, and you have 12 seconds on bedtime starting now.
I curl up every night with my teddy bear, whose name is Bobby, with a cup of a hot chocolate drink, the name of which I won't actually broadcast on the air, but I find awfully beneficial and sends me off so I can count sheep.
Well, Derek Nimmo was not only speaking at the end of that round, he was also cheering himself for his efforts. And, well, he might well do so, because he has got quite a few more points. And the next subject is happy families, and Barry Crowd, it's your turn to begin. And would you start now?
Happy families, I do possess one. We used to have 3 children, one of each, but very recently we had an addition. We now have 4 children. Before I was married, I had 4th theories.
Clement Freud is challenged.
Repetition
of the word children.
Yes, I'm afraid so, Barry. So, Clement, you get the subject and a point, and 50 seconds. Happy families, starting now.
I think of all the happy families I know, the Parsons must come out the happiest. It's not only the lovely lady who is married to our chairman, whom I used to know many years ago, because she was a friend of my wife's with whom she went to dramatic school.
Barry Cryer has challenged.
It's only indelicacy, it's not qualifying.
Well, he hasn't got to the indelicate bit.
The revelations were mind-boggling. I didn't want to.
Why did you stop him?
I was just being... I had an attack of gallantry, Peter. I'm sorry.
I see.
So what is your challenge?
I wanted to boggle myself.
My challenge is now withdrawn.
Stopped him in mid-flow.
Oh, the revelations were too...
But, I mean, I have to give him a point, you know.
Yes, I know you do, but it's worth it, because we live in a changing world, and I just...
All right, well, he's
Did they hear that your wife went to dramatic school with my wife? Because I would like this to be very clear.
No, you've got the subject. You can
I didn't want to say it again and then be had for repetition, because I was shouted down as I was in the middle of explaining.
It's up to you, Clement. You play the game your way, and I will judge it my way.
Thank you very much.
And Barry's given you a point, and there are 35 seconds with you on Happy Families, starting now.
And then...
Peter Jones is challenged.
Hesitation.
I think you're right, Peter. And Peter, you have the subject with 32 seconds left on Happy Families, starting now.
I think the happiest are those that are extended with great-grandparents, grandparents.
Derek Nimmo has challenged.
Well, I was parents.
No, grandparents and great-grandparents. Great-grandparents hyphenate, grandparents is not. Great-grandparents...
Or something.
Peter Jones has got
that,
the point, and there are 25 seconds on Happy Families, starting now.
In other words, many generations are all there milling together, and the situations that must arise...
You can't have many generations all milling together.
Why not?
It's not possible, not many generations. One or two.
4 or 5.
Yes.
Milling. They're a bit old for milling.
I think your point is valid. Many generations milling together, it does seem a little bit...
I mean, 84-year-old grannies milling. I mean, you couldn't...
Not much else they can do.
We now leave the subject with Peter Jones, with 18 seconds left on Happy Families, starting now.
And then all the tensions that must arise between people of...
Clement Freud is challenged.
Hesitation.
Yes. I've never heard you press your buzzer for such a long time, Clement. You were obviously...
I pressed as well, Nicholas, that's why, sorry.
It doesn't make a difference. Clement Freud's light comes on.
Yes.
Oh, I see. There are 12 seconds on Happy Families with you, Clement Freud, starting now.
In my youth, there was a card game called Happy Families, which, for all I know, is still in vogue now. The butcher, the baker, the candlestick maker, all sorts of professions and names.
Derek Nimmo.
Well, no profession, they're all trades. Deviation.
got to go all through them. There's Doctor...
The
Yes,
doctor is a
doctor, yeah.
professional.
Well, right.
Yes.
It's worth a go, though, wasn't it, really?
Mr. Chip. Clement Freud, you have a half second on Happy Families starting now.
Also,
Well, that round did a world of good for the people who make the cards of Happy Families, didn't it? And the next subject is Clement Freud, and it is what I put in to improve things. Clement, would you talk? 60 seconds starting now.
I did once suggest in a newspaper article that every housewife should have a kit of foodstuffs and basic ingredients which she put into things in order to improve them. And it is surprising how many little women feel that if double cream and mushrooms and caviar are injected into, poured over, or thrown at some totally unpalatable item, the
Derek Nimmo.
acceptability thereof will
I
be
know,
vast.
he couldn't think what the result would be, obviously. Well, Derek,
You
the
really
situation...
not want me to go on because it was really.
No, we
going to
never
be
really
quite
want you to
interesting.
go on.
I see. I'm
But,
glad you made
you
it
do.
so clear.
We can't stop you sometimes. What I put in to improve things starting now.
Well, this morning I put something in to improve things in my garden. Some rather pleasant plants. A rhododendron bush I inserted into the soil, which I hope will flower any morning and waken me with a twinkling,
Peter Jones has
gleaming,
challenged.
Repetition of
flashing-
morning.
Yes, absolutely right.
What I put to improve things, 16 seconds, starting now.
Well, talking of rhododendrons, I often dig the soil in the garden, turn it over, in other words, with a fork or spade. I'm not going to tell you exactly that I put in.
So, a very interesting situation at the end of the last round. Peter Jones came with a flourish, but I'm afraid he didn't manage to catch up on Derek Nimmo or Clement Freud. Our newcomer, Barry Cryer, finished in fourth place, just the way behind Peter Jones, who was a few points behind Clement Freud. But once again, our winner this week, Derek Nimmo. We hope you've enjoyed this edition of Just a Minute. From all of us here, goodbye.
The chairman of Just a Minute was Nicholas Parsons. The programme was devised by Ian Messiter and produced by David Hatch. We present Kenneth Williams, Clement Freud, Peter Jones and Andre Melly in Just a Minute. And as the minute waltz fades away, here to tell you about it is our chairman, Nicholas Parsons.
Thank you. Thank you very much indeed. Hello and welcome once again to Just a Minute. And as usual, I'm going to ask our four competitors to speak if they can for just a minute on some subject that I will give them without hesitation, without repetition, and without deviating from the subject on the card. And this week we will begin the show with Kenneth Williams. Kenneth, can you talk on the subject of getting wound up? Something that you've never been known to do in this program. Can you talk about it, if possible, for 60 seconds, starting now?
Well, I suppose it really refers to winding up of mechanical things. You can't wind up a person. I suppose it could be taken to mean that you could get so passionate, carried away with some sort of inner emotion that you became almost inarticulate in the process. I suppose.
And Clement Freud is challenged.
It's the third, I suppose.
Yes, all right, you let the second one go very generously, and you've challenged him on that. I agree with the challenge. You get a point for a correct challenge, Clement. You take the subject, and there are 42 seconds on getting wound up, starting now.
I used to have a watch which required...
And Andre Melly has challenged.
Hesitation.
Yes. You have a point, Andre. 38 seconds, getting wound up, starting now.
I get really wound up when I'm in the presence of someone famous and distinguished like Kenneth Williams. I mean, my hands go all sweaty, my feet go a bit smelly, and I gulp and I can't speak. Well, you don't have to, do you? I mean, he talks, he does it all, and you can just stand there and look at him and come over all queer, and oh, it's lovely, and I'm really wound up.
Clement Freud is challenged.
Repetition.
Of what?
Coming over all queer.
Well, she only came over queer once, but there was a repetition of coming over. So, Clement, you have the subject and 16 seconds on getting wound up, starting now.
I now have one which is totally magnetic. There's no winding, nothing to do with the mechanism. Simply look at it and get a tiny magnet, hold it to one side of the copper-bottomed frame, and by applying it...
As usual, the whistle tells us that 60 seconds is up, and whoever is speaking at that moment gains an extra point. It was Clement Freud, who now, at the end of the first round, has 3 points. Andre Melly has 1, the other 2 have yet to score. Clement, your turn to begin. The subject, the perfect secretary. Can you talk about her for just a minute, starting now?
I'm not at all sure the perfect secretary actually exists, because I have for many years, often, frequently, now and then, advertised for just such a human being without a great deal of success. I have written no smoking, car driving.
Andre Melly has
I
challenged.
thought there was a hesitation after the written.
No,
Was
he
there
was
not?
keeping going quite well,
I'm
even
very
though
sorry.
he
I
hasn't
did
found.
breathe.
Well, yes.
So an incorrect challenge, Clement. You get a point for that, and you have 44 seconds to continue with the perfect secretary, starting now.
And it is quite essential that she has good feet. That was a pause.
Yes, and Andre Melly buzzed first.
A hesitation.
A hesitation, I agree. So the feet have got you in there, and you have 39 seconds with the perfect secretary, Andre, starting now.
I think that the perfect secretary should have a squint, be round about 52, with sticky out teeth and knocked knees. Most wives will agree that this is, more or less, the perfect secretary. Someone who can be a stone wall for your husband when... Oh, what...
And Kenneth Williams challenge.
Well, I was coming to the rescue, really. I
Thank
thought you
you,
were sort of
yes.
running out.
Yes.
You know, dear.
That description of the perfect secretary, I could quite agree that she should run out. There are 17 seconds for you, Kenneth, on the perfect secretary, starting now.
She should be well groomed, also proficient at taking down dictation.
Peter Jones has challenged.
Hesitation.
I quite agree. Once he'd taken something down, he hesitated. So, Peter, you have a point, and 9 seconds to continue with the perfect secretary, starting now.
The perfect secretary should be, above all else, private and unobtrusive. She should glide in and out of the office.
Clement Freud should challenge.
Repetition of should.
Yes. You've got him with the correct challenge. You have a point, and you start now.
Shorthand and typewriting.
At the end of that round, Clement Freud increased his lead over all the others. Peter Jones, will you begin the next round? And the subject, faulty equipment, starting now.
Well, I'm not sure whether the listeners realize that that is a considerable disadvantage in a game of this kind when you're absolutely dependent on the mechanical features of it and the scoring, the light flashing, and the acoustics of the hall. The present audience, of course, contribute enormously to such a success if one ever achieves it. I don't know whether I will, but I never have actually kept going for 60 seconds on the subject of equipment or anything else. And I doubt very much whether I will now. However, I'm going to attempt it because all this gear, in other words, it's called, the engineers have spent days probably studying their job, and here they are, and this is a field day for them when they've got a very elaborate arrangement of wires and lights and magnets and carbon things inside the things that amplify our voices, send them out all over the country, and in fact abroad as well, very often. Australia and New Zealand, Malaya, they are fans of ours all over the world. And they restore it because we have perfect equipment normally. But when it's faulty, it is a tremendous disadvantage to me personally because it does depress me. It makes me hesitant, inclined to pause before I find the right word, and even to deviate from the subject which has been given to me by our chairman. Is it about an hour and a half?
Kenneth Williams buzzed then to let you off the hook because you have been going for exactly 90 seconds without...
Well, even the clock's wrong.
Yes.
What?
Well, Peter, you were going so well. We give you 2 points for speaking for 60 seconds. I'm sure the audience response will give you a bonus point for going for the extra 30. And I would like to give you a bonus point for your witty reply on the end of it. But let's give you 3 points for that, Peter. And at the end of that round, you're in second place. Andre, it's your turn to begin. The subject is my trouble. You can take that any way you like. And would you talk about it if you can for just a minute, starting now?
Well, my trouble is that I can't say no. I've never been able to. It's got me into frightful trouble in the past. You see, I'm so sweet and kind. I don't like to hurt people's feelings. And it is a great difficulty to me. I suppose the truth is that I'm rather weak and soppy and silly and can be easily taken advantage of. I go into a shop and those dreadful saleswomen, I just want a blue dress and I come out with a red one costing double that I don't like at all because I can't say in the...
Peter Jones is challenged.
Repetition of because.
Yes, you have 35 seconds on my trouble, starting now.
My trouble is that my mind wanders and doesn't respond immediately to the cue word that Nicholas Parsons gives me. I'm not able to recall these anecdotes that in the normal way I'm able to come out with in pubs or other places. Perhaps it is the situation in which I find myself causes this trouble, I don't know. But
Clement Freud is challenged.
Yes, I challenge on trouble, which is the word
and
on
the
the
trouble
card.
is the word, so it's an incorrect challenge, and Peter has another point. Yes. And he has 12 seconds left on my trouble, starting now.
Well, it's not very important, I know. It's not a great...
Kenneth Williams is challenged.
It's a deviation. It is important. Everything he says is important.
My trouble is not important. My trouble, in comparison with the troubles all over the world, is insignificant.
But give Kenneth a bonus point because the audience liked the
well, they like Kenneth. You can give him a lot of points.
Yes. But
they like
Peter,
all of us. We all adore each other. It's a mutual love match between us.
And that's what they come for when the defences are down. Peter, you weren't deviating from the subject of my trouble. You have 7 seconds left, starting now.
If I listed all the disadvantages that I came into the world possessing, I could not really claim that...
On this occasion, Peter Jones was talking when the whistle went, so he gained that extra point, and at the end of that round, he has taken the lead. He is 1 ahead of Clement Freud and 5 ahead of Andre, and Kenneth Williams are equal in 3rd place. Kenneth, we're back with you. Would you talk on the subject of Sir Joseph Wilson Swan? That is what Hermesitus thought of for you. Can you talk about him for just a minute, starting now?
Joseph Wilson Swan invented this electric light bulb, you see. He done it about 1860, which means he was before Edison. And he come from Sunderland, of all places. To think, as you travel through that incredible city, that there was a man who not only invented this, but he also done this incredible thing of artificial silk before anyone else had thought of it.
Clement Freud is challenged.
We've had 2 inventors and 3 dones.
Well, he done it twice, you see. He invented 2 lots of things, you see.
Clement, you have a correct challenge, and there are 33 seconds left for you on Sir Joseph Wilson Swan, starting now.
One of the most memorable things about Sir Joseph Wilson Swan is the number of signets which Lady Swan provided him with. All over the northeast of England, Darlington, Gateshead, Sunderland, Newcastle. Of course, the great thing about Sir Joseph were his matches. And they had...
Kenneth Williams.
Deviation for Joseph Wilson Swan was nothing to do with matches.
Sir Joseph
Before
Wilson.
the light bulb, he had the matches.
I agree with Kenneth's challenge. There are 9 seconds, Kenneth, on Sir Joseph Wilson Swan starting now.
Well, on the occasion of his knighthood, he was actually received not at Buckingham Palace, but at St. James's. And he knelt in order to receive...
Clement, your turn to begin. The subject, insatiability. Can you talk on that, about that, for just a minute, starting now?
Insatiability means an inability to get enough. For instance, if you were talking about Sir Joseph Wilson Swan, and all you actually intended to portray was here was a humble fellow who invented matches, and somebody comes along and says in 1904 he did this, and in 1896 he was very famous for doing that.
Peter Jones.
Repetition of 1800.
In 1904 he did this, and in 1800...
100.
People were laughing. I couldn't hear terribly well.
There are 35 seconds for you, Peter, on insatiability, starting now.
Yes, well, it's all to do with some absolutely Oh, my God.
Kenneth Williams.
Well, it was all sort of falling away with you.
Yes,
there,
gone.
Peter.
Yes,
it fell away, didn't
he's
it?
not able to be insatiable in this game. There are 30 seconds left, Kenneth, for you on insatiability, starting now.
It's opportune that this subject has been raised because showing in our city is a film on this very problem, and it depicts a scene whereby these people are gathered together and overdoing it in every way, so much so that the body blows up like a balloon and there's a terrible explosion and an appalling... What?
And Clement Freud has challenged you before the blow-up.
Repetition.
A what?
So much so.
So much so. Oh, a very tough challenge, but I have to allow it if you're going to do it. And so there are 9 seconds left for insatiability, starting now.
It isn't very hard to talk about insatiability for 9 seconds. You hardly get sufficient time to explain the full plethora.
At the end of that round, Clement Freud has a lead of 2 over Peter Jones, and Kenneth's in 3rd place, Andre in 4th place. And Peter, your turn to begin. Oh, it's a rather cute subject. What I'm thinking about. Can you talk for just a minute about what I'm thinking about, starting now?
Well, I'm thinking about my childhood in Shropshire, the rolling hills and green pastures which I loved so much, and the twinkling streams, and the school I attended with the classrooms, the playground, and...
Kenneth Williams.
Deviation, you couldn't have attended a school with classrooms. You must have attended them on your own. You couldn't have gone with the classroom.
Well, I couldn't have attended a school without classrooms.
So I
Could
think
I?
it's, Peter Jones, an incorrect challenge, so you still have the subject and you have 44 seconds. What I'm thinking about, starting now.
And the playing fields where no doubt many of today's battles were lost. All the old masters march across my closed eyes as I sit back and recall them. Bretherton, Fothergill, Ashwin, Cuthbert, MacDonald, Newbolt, Benson, Hedges, and some of the boys too, Wilbraham and Hazelworth, Llewellyn.
Clement Freud has challenged you.
Hesitation.
Yes, I think there was definitely a hesitation.
There was a
there.
hesitation,
They were
yes.
very generous to you. Peter, Clement got in. There are 9 seconds left for Clement on what I'm thinking about, starting now.
What I'm thinking about are my poets of my youth, Chaucer, Shakespeare, Licorice, Anderson.
the end of that round, Clement Freud increased his lead, and we're now back with Andre Melly to start. What I thought you said is one of those devious subjects that Ian Messer has sought out for you to talk about if you can, Andre, starting now.
What I thought you said was that you couldn't come for the weekend and were sending your mother instead. Well, I knew it was a very bad line, and I said I'd ring you back, because very fond as I am of that particular parent, I didn't actually want her this time at the end of this particular week to which we are coming. So, if...
Kenneth Williams, a chance.
Hesitation, I thought.
Oh, yes, definitely. Kenneth, a point to you. 37 seconds. What I thought you said, starting now.
Well, he's your kid as well. Looking at you, I sometimes wonder. What's that? I say it looks bad enough for thunder. Could be the sort of remark which occasions, I thought that was what you said. In other words, it implies a misapprehension, a interpretation that was, in fact, incorrect. Unfortunately, language is often capable of making these mistakes. We often use words with...
And Andre Melly, challenge.
No, too often.
Yes, what I thought you said is back with you, Andre, and there are 10 seconds left, starting now.
What I thought you said was a load of rubbish. I mean, I'm sitting here only too willing to enjoy all those beautiful words that drop from your lips. But what were you on about just then? That's what I said.
Kenneth, we're back with you, and the subject is, oh, another nice one, what I'm hiding. Would you talk on that subject for 60 seconds, starting now?
I'm hiding what most actors are hiding. Under the facade, we are hiding always a deep sense of inadequacy and inferiority. I think...
Peter Jones, a challenge.
I don't think he's hiding it.
Peter, we give you a bonus point for a good challenge, but as he wasn't deviating with the subject, we leave it with Kenneth, and he has 45.5 seconds on what I'm hiding. Start again if you can, Kenneth, now.
Well, when he makes a crack like that, one is forced to the rejoinder, out of the mouths of babes comes forth wisdom. And indeed, it is true, but we must return. What am I hiding? Don't clothes hide the most impressionable things that we have? Oh, why do we choose this garb?
Clement Freud is challenged.
Why?
I know, but it was so lovely. I wish you didn't go
yes,
on.
Lovely.
The correct
I'll
challenge,
take
though,
a
so you take
point for a clever challenge and let him go on.
It wasn't as clever as all.
No, it wasn't as clever.
That wasn't a clever challenge at all. Any fool could have challenged on that.
Clement Freud has 19 seconds to try and win just a minute, and what I'm hiding starting now.
What I'm hiding is my natural reluctance to win just a minute, for which reason I pressed my buzzer in order to stop Kenneth Williams from exposing himself, as it were, without clothes or shoes or socks, simply a mind rampant with ideas which the audience...
Well, at the end of that round, Clement Freud, again speaking when the whistle went, again got the extra point, and he's increased his lead. And Clement, we're back with you. The subject is the best thing to do. Talk about that one now, if you can, starting now.
The best thing to do is to grab her by the ears and put your foot on her nose, slowly dismantling her pantyhose from the knee down towards the toe. Her ankle is another...
Kenneth Williams,
I think this is disgraceful. What are we on about? I mean, it sounds as though he's undressing some girl, doesn't it, with his foot in her face?
I think that's the worst thing you could do.
Yes, a deviation,
You
too.
speak for yourself.
Eh? Gracious me. Family show? Pushing your face in, bashing your face in? No, it's disgraceful.
Kenneth, you have 43 seconds to continue on the best thing to do, starting now.
It was said far, far...
Oh. Clement Freud, you have a challenge.
Repetition.
Yes. 41 seconds, the best thing to do, Clement, starting now.
This is a far ditto better thing that I have done. than I have ever achieved prior to this moment was in The Tale of Two Cities, a very boring man, I thought, called Sidney Carton, or possibly Carson, maybe Carter, perhaps Cartwright.
Kenneth Williams.
Deviation, the name was Carton, not maybe Carton, or Carter, or Cartwright.
But it was a conjecture. It's got nothing to do with the best thing to do, though, has it?
No, that's right. That's what I meant to say, yes.
So you have 24 seconds on the best thing to do, Kenneth, starting now.
The best thing to do is open those windows that were nailed shut with bigotry and ignorance. Let in the love, let in the light and the fresh air, and renew yourself spiritually. Take your mind off the material things of this world, deny yourself food, and let the stomach reassure itself in leisure and recover.
So Kenneth Williams, speaking then when the whistle went, got an extra point. He's moving up on Peter Jones, who's still a few points behind our leader, Clement Freud. Peter, your turn to begin. The subject, life on a lighthouse. I don't know whether you've been on one, but can you talk on the subject for just a minute, starting now?
Well, life on a lighthouse is not nearly as difficult nowadays as it used to be with the arrival of helicopters, because one can be taken off for leave fairly frequently. Of course, a lot would depend on the company of the people with whom I would be sharing this abode in the middle of the ocean. I imagine it to be some distance from the land and not actually on the edge of a cliff or somewhere, in the center of the ocean, in fact. For instance,
Clement Freud is challenged.
Two oceans.
Yes. I'm afraid the ocean came back again, Peter. Life on a lighthouse, Clement, 34 seconds, starting now.
Life on a lighthouse is something which I'm particularly well placed to talk about or review, because from the age of 9 to 14, I went to a school within hailing distance of a lighthouse which was near Lundy. Each morning, lunchtime, early afternoon, dusk, evening, and then again at night, it twinkled short, long, medium, erstwhile, everlasting, stop. This was the code by which boats or ships...
I'm afraid we have no more time to play just a minute, so let me give you the final score. Andre Melly finished in 4th place. Kenneth Williams finished in a very strong 3rd place, just behind Peter Jones, but they were both way behind this week's winner, Clement Freud. We do hope you've enjoyed this edition of Just a Minute. From all of us here, goodbye.
The chairman of Just a Minute was Nicholas Parsons. The programme was devised by Ian Messiter and produced by John Lloyd.
We present Kenneth Williams, Derek Nimmo, Clement Freud and Barry Cryer in Just a Minute. And as the minute waltz fades away, here to tell you about it is our chairman, Nicholas Parsons.
Thank you. Thank you very much indeed. Hello, welcome to Just a Minute. And once again, I'm going to ask our 4 clever, astute, bright, brilliant panelists if they can talk for just a minute on some unlikely subject that I will give them without hesitation, without repetition, and without deviating from the subject which is on the card in front of me, if they can. We'll start the show this week with Derek Nimmo. Derek, the subject that Ian Messiter has thought of for you to start the show is chambers. Would you talk about chambers for 60 seconds, if you can, starting now?
What a very potty question. Now, all kinds of chambers, of course. One thinks normally, I suppose, of a bedroom. And a rhyme comes to mind that I'll slightly paraphrase. Goosey gander, whither shall I wander? Upstairs and down again. And in my lady's chamber, there I saw an old man who wouldn't say his prayers. I took him by the left leg and threw him down the thingamabobs. Now, the thing about that piece of poetry, it was written during Oliver Cromwell's reign, and I use the word advisedly for Mr. Freud's benefit, because...
Clement Freud is challenged.
Hesitation. He couldn't get my name out.
Yes, there was a small but definite hesitation. So, Clement, I would agree with the challenge. You get a point for a correct challenge. You take over the subject. There are 24 seconds left, and you start now.
Chambers is an encyclopedia which I use very frequently. Also a pot which is occasionally kept under a bed for purposes which, in the course of an all-family game, one had better not go into very carefully at this moment. Also, I've said also
and,
before...
Derek Nimmo challenge.
I'm agreeing with his own mistake.
You're agreeing with it. Also, he did repeat. Derek, a point for a correct challenge. 7 seconds on Chambers, starting now.
Because the bird, you see, was how they marched, the troops, the Roundheads, walked with this peculiar kind...
Kenneth Williams has challenged.
I'd like to know the relevance of Chambers to Roundheads.
I agree. He was trying to take up where he left off, but I don't think he made...
Of course I was. I mean, that's what they
Yes, but you
about.
you didn't make the direct connection with Chambers, which is the subject on the card, so I agree with Kenneth's challenge of deviation. Kenneth, you have 1.5 seconds on Chambers, starting now.
Well, lawyers have them, and I've frequently been...
As you probably know, the whistle tells us that 60 seconds is up, and whoever is speaking at that moment gains an extra point.
So that means I'm in the lead, right?
Absolutely, Kenneth. A commanding lead. You have double the points that Clement Freud and Derek Nimmo have. Oh, Kenneth, your turn to begin. The subject is the critics. We'd like you to talk on that one for 60 seconds, if you can, starting now.
Well, Shaw was one of the greatest of these, no question of that. He said there's only one thing to do about ignorance, enlighten it. And certainly most of the critics today need that very badly. Brendan Behan said they're there every night. They see it done all the time, but they can't do it themselves. And I think there's a great deal of truth there, because the scholarship and the acumen and the necessary erudition which goes into judgment, and all judgment, whether it be moral...
Clement Freud challenged.
Repetition of judgment.
There was a bit too much judgment.
Well, I was just getting underway, wasn't I?
You were more than
underway. She's agog with it. She was waiting to hear the next bit.
We all were agog, actually.
Yeah.
But you had gone magnificently.
Ruined my flow, hasn't it?
35 seconds you went for, well over half a minute before you did repeat yourself, and Clement picked you up, and he gets a point for that. 25 seconds on the critics, Clement, starting now.
One of the most interesting things about critics is that they always sit in the front row near an aisle or gangway in order to be able to make a fast getaway when the curtain comes down. There are, of course, many different kinds of critics, and these are divided up by theatres into first night and those that come on the second evening or for the third performance, depending on the importance...
Clement Freud, speaking then when the whistle went, gained that extra point. Clement, you're in the lead now, one ahead of Kenneth Williams. Barry Cryer, will you begin the next round? The subject is doing the impossible. Would you talk about that for just a minute, if you can, starting now?
The expression doing the impossible calls to my mind meeting a gentleman who did in fact attempt to do everything in the most difficult way possible. When I met him on the golf course, he was in fact...
Derek Nimmo's challenge.
Wrong challenge. Meeting and met. I'm sorry, I made a wrong challenge.
You made a
point to Mr.
challenge,
Cryer.
so Barry
Thank you,
Cryer
Derek.
gets a point for an incorrect challenge, and he keeps the subject, and he continues for another 47 seconds, starting now.
In the clubhouse, he was carrying a billiard cue, a tennis racket, and a fly swatter. "What are you doing?" I asked him, to which he replied, "I am attempting to play the game of golf in the most difficult way possible, and my ultimate ambition..."
Derek Nimmo has challenged.
Repetition of possible.
What?
Repetition of possible.
Yes,
There
because...
was, yes.
No, you see, you're allowed to repeat
forgot
the words in the card, Barry, and that is impossible, but you repeated possible.
And it was going to be a very old joke as well.
But you never know. Sometimes the oldest jokes get the best reaction from the audience.
Barry.
Derek Nimmo, correct challenge of point 33 seconds, doing the impossible starting now.
Gosh, we must all try and do the impossible. Dream the impossible dream. That's what I say to myself
Kenneth
every
Williams
morning when I get up. Oh, what a wonderful
Oi!
world this is. What's the matter?
Before you remotely got underway, Kenneth Williams challenged you. What was your challenge?
Said dream twice.
We had 2 dreams, I'm afraid. Impossible dream, yes. So, Kenneth, you have another point. You have 27 seconds starting now.
Doing the impossible is, of course, what do you call it?
Derek Nimmo challenge.
What do you call it, hesitation?
I would call that a slight...
Well, you made me nervous. Deliberately look at me like that with that basilisk stare.
Right, his basilisk stare got him a hesitation and a point, and 23 seconds doing the impossible. Derek starting now.
Down to Dover I go with my swimming pants and my Union Jack, and plunge into the briny, and away I go with a quick breaststroke towards Calais.
Kenneth Williams has challenged.
This is not doing the impossible. He could do all these
I've
things.
never got to Calais, have you?
I can't quite see Derek Nimmo getting beyond...
Well, anyway, I haven't had a word in Edgeway.
You've had more words in Edgeways than anybody else so far in this particular show.
Graceful.
14 seconds, Derek, on doing the impossible, starting now.
Scientists working in dark rooms in universities unknown to the rest of the population are trying to achieve...
Clement Freud.
Deviation.
Why?
A university unknown to the rest of the population is...
I felt he established quite definitely that it's what they were doing that had never been heard of, not the
I'm just
university.
doubting the validity of a degree from a university.
I'm now going to turn
Be
to
a
our
university no one's ever heard of.
Oh, shut up, Freud! I'm now going to turn to our erudite, omniscient audience sitting in front of us and ask you to be the final judges and arbiters in this difficult situation for me. If you agree with Clement's challenge, will you boo for him? And if you disagree, and would you cheer for Derek, and will you all do it together now? Derek, you definitely established, according to the audience, that you were talking about what they were doing, which was unheard of and unknown. So carry on, and there are 6 seconds left, starting now.
Silas Bloggs paddling his own canoe up the Amazon in search...
At the end of that round, Derek not only got the point for speaking when the whistle went, he gained a number of points in the round, so he has taken the lead at the end of the round. He's now has twice as many points as Clement Freud and Kenneth Williams, who are equal in second place. And Clement Freud, will you please begin the next round? The subject, Monte Carlo Casino. Would you talk about that for just a minute, if you can, starting now?
I was once asked to appear in a show called Monte Carlo's Flying Casino, but as the money was insufficient to woo me away from the rather dreary BBC serial I was doing at the time, I said no and went to the south of France, where the capital of Monaco sports a number of casinos in which elderly ladies sit around green baize tables and blatantly cheat. What they do is to wait until the roulette ball falls into a particular slot on the wheel, when they all claim it. That is my money, says one. No, repeat, it belongs to me, cries another. And as this happens in French, Dutch, German, Austrian, Belgian...
Derek Nimmo challenge.
Hesitation before Austrian.
Yeah, but not enough. No, I disagree. There are 18 seconds for you to continue, Clement, on Monte Carlo casinos, starting now.
I once sat in the Monte Carlo casino when an American, watching the spin, tore off a fly button and shouted, "Gentlemen, this represents $486, at which point the ball came and settled in exactly the number which this aforesaid gentleman had backed.
Freud was then speaking when the whistle went, so he started with the subject and finished with the subject. He got 2 points throughout the round, and he's in second place, 1 point behind Derek Nimmo. Derek, your turn to begin again. The subject, getting nicked. That's a good subject for me to read out, isn't it, dear mister? Would you talk on that one for just a minute, starting now?
Out in my garden the other day, I did a very curious thing. I had a pair of secateurs in my hand, and I was doing a bit of judicious pruning with my roses. and I nicked my finger, quite by mistake, and the blood...
Barry Cryer.
Is repetition of the personal pronoun I qualified?
Well,
because I counted 7.
7?
Yeah.
We don't count those little words. You
Well,
can't
if it-
count that.
7.
If there were 7 eyes, you should have it, Barry, but I didn't count 7 eyes.
I'll settle for 6.
Barry, as you don't play it as often as the others, it's
playing it tonight.
It's a tough and a keen challenge, but we...
Is this a new rule, then? We can count
No,
them
we
eyes.
try to ignore the eyes and the its. But if
I'm
there had
groping
been,
my way.
If there had been 7, I would have allowed
You certainly
it,
get
but I
nicked if you
disagree.
start groping your way, mate.
So don't charge any points. Derry keeps the subject. Getting nicked. 50 seconds starting now.
I want manage...
Kenneth, Clement, Freud.
Nap is the 7th eye.
A bonus point to Clement Freud for a witty challenge. Derry keeps the subject. Getting nicked. 47 seconds starting now.
Ja had a terrible time once with a local constabulary because I was riding a bicycle with an L plate on the back. It was an odd thing to do, really. And the vicar came down the street towards me, and at the same time, this sergeant, his name was Wilkinson, popped out from behind a tree and said, "Why haven't you got your bicycle clips on? Come back with me to the station immediately." And when I got there, there was a blue lamp.
Clement Freud is challenged.
Repetition of bicycle.
Yes. And I would have thought deviation because you cannot be nicked
No, you can't. It's
for
rubbish.
having no
I quite
bicycle
agree with
clips. It's just good advice to wear bicycle clips. Clement, you have a point and 26 seconds on getting nicked starting now.
John Betjeman, writing about Oscar Wilde's arrest at the Cadogan Hotel, has his policeman saying, "We have come for to take you to where felons dwell." It's a very difficult poem because it is totally repetitive and people would buzz if we related it. But as a result, the famous author was taken to a police station in inner London and charged by...
Well, Clement wasn't nicked by any of his competitors before the whistle, so he got an extra point for speaking at that particular moment, and he's now taken the lead ahead of Derek Nimmo at the end of that round. Kenneth, we're back with you to start. Would you talk about the subject of Immanuel Kant for 60 seconds, starting now?
Well, he led a very quiet life in Königsberg, actually, had an enormous influence on European philosophy in the sphere of morals, largely. It'd be impossible to encapsulate exactly what he believed and wrote about in the Critique of Pure Reason, but I think a sentence like to treat humanity as an end in itself and never as a means would be about the nearest you could get in Kantian terms. Of course, Kant is used in another sense when people refer to the would-be...
Barry Cryer.
Was that a direct quote from Immanuel Kant? Did he ever say in Kantian terms, Immanuel Kant?
I wasn't quoting Kant at all.
But Kenneth Williams said...
I wasn't quoting Kant at all.
In that case, I withdraw with grace and a certain amount of dignity.
That didn't ruin my flow, that's all. What a disgrace. I'm sitting here, I got all worked up, then I was throbbing with it. You could see
Well,
me
all that
face.
happens is that whether he's withdrawn with dignity or not, you get a point for a wrong challenge, Kenneth, so it's to your advantage, and you have the subject still in 21 seconds on Immanuel Kant, starting now.
Of course, the other... Oh, really?
Kenneth Williams will start again. You have 21 seconds on Immanuel Kant, starting
Well, I
now.
can't now, because it's just ruined me. It's just ruined me.
Kenneth Freud is charged.
Deviation. He wasn't talking about Immanuel Kant.
Kenneth Williams will
Talking
continue with
about
Immanuel
personal
Kant. You have
ruination.
18 seconds, starting now.
But it'd be impossible for me to collect my thoughts and all the thoughts that need collect...
And Clement Freud is challenged again.
Repetition of thoughts.
Yes, you repeated thoughts, but don't worry, Kenneth, carry on in Immanuel Kant, and you have 14 seconds, starting now.
Well, you see...
And Derek Nimmo's challenge.
What's happening?
Kenneth Williams is continuing on Immanuel Kant because he was thrown by all three of you. He has 13 seconds starting now.
He makes a definite...
Derek Nimmo's challenge.
Do you mind if I go home? much point, does there really?
Derek Nimmo's got... Kenneth's got another point.
Just as much point about hearing you being nicked for the bicycle clips on. I know what rubbish that was, too.
Another wrong challenge, so you have 12 seconds on Immanuel Kant, Kenneth, starting now.
The divorce that he made.
Clement Freud is challenged.
I'd like him to have another point.
So he's got another point, and he's got 12 seconds on Immanuel Kant, starting now.
I'd like him to have another point, too.
And he has 11 seconds on Immanuel Kant, starting now.
Well, in Kantian terms.
Derek Cry is challenged.
I would like him to have another point, but I'd like to apologise for making the interruption that started this mess.
Barry Cry, they've all given you another point, so you have 10 seconds on Immanuel Kant, starting now.
There is phenomena and noumena, and these are the two spheres which the human mind has great difficulty in...
Derek Nimmo's challenged
Repetition
twice.
of human.
Yes, I'm afraid you did mention human.
It's amazing I could remember anything the way I was treated.
I should think that is perfectly true. But you have taken a commanding lead with all their help. And Derek Nimmo has 4 seconds on Immanuel Kant, starting now.
He once said, and I think this, for me, sums up his whole philosophy.
Derek Nimmo was then speaking when the whistle went. He's now equal in second place with Clement Freud, but Kenneth Williams has taken a commanding lead of 3 points over them at the end of that. Barry Cry, will you begin the next round? The subject, my intentions. Can you talk on that for just a minute, starting now?
I went to see my intended father-in-law, my prospective wife's parents, male of the species.
Kenneth Williams is challenged.
In hesitation, I felt.
Well, not quite.
Yes, was said, and he pulled me up in the middle of my beyond Kent. I was just underway. I might have gone sailing onto the sea of, what do you call it?
Hesitation.
Fluency.
Barry, I try to be fair, which is all I can do. Barry Cry, I leave the subject with you, having got another point. My intentions with 54 seconds left, starting now.
Fixing me with a basilisk stare, he quoted Immanuel Kant. A man approaching his prospective father-in-law had better...
Clement Freud is challenged.
That's the second father-in-law we've had.
I know. He may have 2 fathers-in-law, but he mustn't repeat it. There are 45 seconds for you, Clement.
I have 2 fathers-in-law.
My intentions, starting
One
now.
of each.
My intentions are to listen very carefully to what is said on this programme, and at opportune moments, and especially when I'm allowed so to do by the chairman and his colleague, I press my buzzer in order to pull up the speaker and point out to him mistakes that he might have made, which are transgressions of the rules of this game, which were published in the Radio Times and other papers regarding hesitation, deviation and repetition of the subject which is on the card, and which a Sunday newspaper not long ago published as the...
And Derek Nimmo's challenge.
Repetition of publish.
Yes, you publish more than once.
Well, of course.
Yes.
I mean, it's an economic thing, you one-off publication.
But you can't publish more than once in this game, Clement. 9 seconds on my intentions, Derek, starting now.
My intentions are entirely dishonourable. Whatever I do in life, I always try to do something which is particularly nasty and horrible. Nicholas Parsons!
Derek Nimmo's particularly nasty intentions kept him going till the whistle went. He gained that extra point. He's 1 point ahead of Clement Freud. He's 1 point behind Kenneth Williams, who's still our leader. Clement, your turn to begin. The subject, insurance, 60 seconds, starting now.
Insurance is something of which I'm not terribly fond, mainly because I dislike insurance companies who never ever seem to pay out when you should be, but take your money whatever. For instance, suppose you dislike someone very much. I've now come to the conclusion that you send them an insurance card, the sort of thing that falls out of a magazine and says £2,859 for you at the age of 45. And I enter on such pieces of paper the names of enemies.
Derek Nimmo has challenged.
Repetition of paper.
I don't remember paper coming in before.
I thought you sent a piece of paper, I'm sorry.
No, I don't
That
think
came
so.
out...
He used the word card before.
Sorry.
29 seconds on insurance, Clement, starting now.
As a result of this, insurance salesmen call upon the person at all sorts of inopportune hours, saying, "Are you the gentleman who wished to partake of our incredible..."
Kenneth Williams has challenged.
Yes, I thought it was a hesitation there.
You thought right. Yes, he couldn't find how to get out of that one. So you have another point, Kenneth, and you have 15 seconds on insurance starting now.
This is very important, especially for celebrities like myself, people who are hills in a very flat country. I myself am insured because I won the...
Derek Nimmo has
Position
challenged.
myself.
Yes, there are 8 seconds on insurance, Derek, starting now.
I, curious enough, am an associate of the Chartered Insurance Institute, and I started off my life in an insurance company in Liverpool.
Clement Freud.
Repetition.
Of what?
Of. I started off my life.
Yes. Clement has a point and 4 seconds on insurance starting now.
Threadneedle Street in the City of London is where many insurance...
So, Clement was speaking on insurance when the whistle went. He gained that extra point. And Derek, it's your turn. The subject, my tall boy. Would you talk about that? And you start now.
My tall boy is called Timothy St. John David Nimmo. He's 18 years old and he leaves school today. Oh, goodness me, how awful it's going to be when he returns home for good. And I fill myself with all kind of alarm. That great big hulking brute that I, for years, banished away into the depths of Berkshire is now coming home permanently to roost with me. And I'll have to support him because he's a near-do-well.
Barry Crouch challenged.
Repetition of home.
Yes, you did say home before.
Yes. Well, listen, Barry.
And Barry, you have a point, and you have 34 seconds on my tall boy starting now.
On the contrary, my tall boy is made of pine. It is light brown in texture and resides in the corner of my own...
Clement Freud.
Deviation. You can't be light brown in texture.
Is that what I said?
Yes.
I must listen when I speak. I'm sorry.
Light brown in appearance, the texture.
Exactly, yes.
And you don't often feel tall boys like that, I don't think. 26 seconds on my tall boy, Clement, starting now.
If you look at the Guinness Book of Records, there's no mention of tall boys in it at all, and yet the very tallest boy is 4,000...
Kenneth Williams has challenged.
Deviation, the Guinness Book of Records has nothing to do with the subject, which is my tall boy.
So, Kenneth, concentrate. You have 18 seconds on my tall boy, starting now.
Mine houses the knickknacks which I have collected o'er the years and is lined with flypaper, so that any stray blue bottles shall be instantly trapped. Because I loathe the thought of those vermin-infested creatures going near my lovely tall boy. I always have to
So, Kenneth, listen well. He got in before the end, gained that extra point, and I will now give you the final score.
Yes?
Barry Cryer was in 4th place. A little way behind Derek Nimmo, who was in 3rd place, only 2 points behind Clement Freud. And Clement Freud finished up 1 point behind this week's winner, Kenneth Williams.
I'm delighted. Marvellous. I hardly ever win.
We do hope you enjoyed this edition of Just a Minute, and from all of us here, goodbye.
The chairman of Just a Minute was Nicholas Parsons. The programme was devised by Ian Messiter and produced by David Hatch.
We present Derek Nimmo, Clement Freud, Peter Jones, and Andre Melly in Just a Minute. And as the minute waltz fades away, here to tell you about it is our chairman, Nicholas Parsons.
Thank you. Thank you very much indeed. Hello and welcome to Just a Minute. And as usual, I'm going to ask each of them in turn if they can speak on some subject, phrase, or word that I will give them without hesitation, without repetition, and without deviating from the subject on the card in front of me. And according to how well they do it, they will gain points, or their opponents will. And we'll begin the show this week with Peter Jones. Peter, a good subject to start with, what I came here to say. Would you talk on that subject for 60 seconds, starting now?
Yes, I certainly will. I came here prepared to give a talk on South America. Because it's a big continent, I thought would make a suitable subject for a discourse lasting about 60 seconds. Now, come with me to the land of the rumba, the tango, piranha fish, and the alligators, or crocodiles, I'm not entirely sure what they're called, not to mention the...
And Andre Melly has challenged.
Hesitation.
I think I
Yes,
agree.
I was hesitation because
Yes.
I said not to mention, and I wasn't going to mention it, but then I thought...
And so as you were fishing for your words amongst the alligators and the piranha fish, Andre buzzed, and Andre, you have a point for a correct challenge. You take over the subject. There are 22 seconds left. What I came here to say, starting now.
What I came here to say is that licorice all sorts are not as big as they used to be. And nobody says so on the packet. I think it's absolutely unfair. Those pink ones...
Clement Freud has challenged.
Deviation.
Why?
Nobody says so on the packet. A packet is an inanimate object which would be totally incapable of speech.
Nobody has printed it on the packet. Therefore, Clement, you have a point for a correct challenge and 12 seconds to continue on what I came here to say, starting now.
I didn't really come here to say anything at all.
And Frederick Nimmo's challenge.
No, we haven't come here to say anything at all. There's no point in saying it, then, is there? Really? It's deviating from the subject if you're not going to talk about what he's come here to say.
But I don't think it was deviating from the subject on the card. So, Clement, you have 10 seconds and another point, 9 seconds, to continue, starting now.
But in spite of that, I will say something, you see, because there are 9 seconds left. And if I went on for that length of time...
The whistle tells us that 60 seconds is up, and whoever is speaking at that moment gains an extra point. On this occasion was Clement Freud, so at the end of the first round, he has a commanding lead over everybody else. And we'll go on to the next subject, which Andre Melly will begin. And the subject is frolics. So would you talk on that for 60 seconds, starting now?
Frolics seem to have gone out of fashion these days. Perhaps there isn't enough hay around, because that's where I believe it all took place. Hey, nonny, no, H-E-Y, and there was a lover and his lass, that kind of thing. I must confess, I've never really had a good frolic. A small romp in a bluebell wood at a very tender age was as near as I got. Now, Derek Nimmo, he's the sort of person I think of frolicking along. You wait till he gets the subject. He'll be over the hills and far
Derek
away.
Nimmo has challenged.
I like the subject.
You give me a difficult problem because...
Well, he's certainly over the hill.
She wasn't, Andre was not deviating from the subject on the card, even though you'd like to have it, and so she still keeps it, having got an extra point for an incorrect challenge. 30 seconds left, Andre, starting now.
With that host of daffodils and the dew under his feet, the clouds passing by in the sky, he'll have a lovely time.
Derek Nimmo's challenged again.
I'd have had my shoes on, so it's deviation. I never frolic without my shoes on.
In Andre's imagination and the way she's putting it over, she can put you in any situation that she likes. So, another wrong challenge, another point. There are 24 seconds on frolics, Andre, starting now.
And a bowler hat and a rolled umbrella, I can see him now. Oh, how lovely to be with him there. Up in the...
Peter Jones has challenged.
A repetition of lovely.
Yes, I think you said lovely much earlier
I
on when you thought of Clement. Derek Nimmo, you automatically say lovely, I know, but there we are. Peter, you have a correct challenge, and you have a point, and you have 17 seconds on frolics starting now.
Well, believe it or not, the Frolics is the name of a nightclub in Cyprus, often mispronounced by the troops there. I've actually been to it. Well, they're very careless, you know, in the way they refer to these places, out of bounds most of the time. However, during the trouble...
At the end of that round, Peter Jones got a point for speaking when the whistle went, so he moved into third place ahead of Derek Nimmo. Derek Nimmo, will you begin the next round? The subject, making an apple turnover. 60 seconds, starting now.
Making an apple turnover. It sounds like one of those childhood jokes, doesn't it? Making an apple turnover. How do you do it? By making an ice cream, that kind of thing. But it isn't really. So the most interesting way of making an apple turnover, and I can think of it, I saw a few years ago in southern Australia, near Adelaide. There's a particular kind of fruit fly, which is known as the yellow belly, which originally came from America and was brought in to combat cactus that were spreading throughout the country. Now, this particular insect goes inside the apples.
Andre Melly's challenge.
I think there were two particulars.
There were two particulars, yes. And 32 seconds on making an apple turnover, starting now.
You put it on the plate. You speak to it very nicely. Could you be so kind and obliging as perhaps to turn over? Because I think that there is a green fly on your lower side. Well, apples are not very often obliging and don't do as you ask. So you take a knife, you cut it up.
Derek Nimmo.
Ask twice.
Yes.
Repetition.
You asked before and you asked again, and Derek's got a point on the subject, and 14 seconds on making an apple turnover, starting now.
And it eats away the core of the fruit, and then eventually they turn over on the branch. Now, this was seen by a man called Charles Crowe, who is a Danish inventor, and it was this very method from the...
Peter Jones has challenged.
Hesitation.
Very good try, with only 4 seconds to go, Peter. Never heard anybody hesitate less than
Hesitated before he mentioned this Danish man, didn't he?
I was going rather quicker than most, actually.
Very much quicker, yes. And the Danish lady in the audience told us quite definitely you're wrong. And there are 4 seconds left with Derek now still, having gained an extra point, making an apple turnover, starting now.
And I rushed into my kitchen, frolicking with my apples in my hand,
Andre
and put
Melly
me some pints of pastry. Wasn't
challenge.
Who did that? Who did what?
Melly.
He rushed into his what?
Kitchen.
His kitchen?
He rushed into his kitchen, actually, yes. It's a thing he often does.
Have you ever been in a kitchen?
My goodness, you have lived, especially Derek Nimmo's kitchen. It's, so what do you think?
That's a deviation of an unknown place to rush into.
Well, you said you wanted a good frolic. If you come into my kitchen, you'd have one.
This is one of those
Never had
impossible
one.
decisions about kitchens. Can't rush into a kitchen, so Andre Melly has a point, and she keeps the subject. There's 1.5 seconds left, making an apple turnover, starting now.
A good pound of cooking.
Andre Melly was then speaking when the whistle went, and so she gained an extra point. She's now increased her lead at the end of that round. Clement Freud, will you begin the next round? The subject is why I enjoy myself. You suddenly look very happy for a change, so will you talk about that? 60 seconds, starting now.
I suppose the main reason why I enjoy myself is because so very few other people do so. And by default, there's nothing else to do but enjoy myself. I go up to a mirror and I look. I shave carefully. I trim my beard. I pluck my moustache, smooth my eyelashes, and enjoy myself inordinately. Some years ago, I appeared in a film called True as a Turtle, directed by Wendy Toy, and I was able to go to the Odeon and enjoy myself inordinately.
Derek Nimmo's challenge.
Repetition of inordinately.
Yes, you were inordinate before, and you shouldn't enjoy yourself so much, obviously, Clement, and you wouldn't get challenged. There are 25 seconds now with you, Derek, on why I enjoy myself, starting now.
Well, why I enjoy myself, I really don't know. If I turn on television set and see myself on the screen, I see this great big oaf leaping about, and I look with distaste, and yet somehow, deep down, subconsciously, I do have a tiny flicker of enjoyment as I see myself frolicking. Yes, that is the word, and I can't repeat it, so you've got to catch it the first time. What are you doing?
Andre Melly, the challenge.
Yeah, it was a slip of the thumb.
No, never mind. Point for me. Point for me. Point for me.
What was your challenge, Andre?
Yeah, it's just a slip.
All right, he's got a point for a wrong challenge, and there are 12 seconds on why I enjoy myself, Derek, starting now.
And I stand in front of the mirror and pluck my eyebrows and wish I could grow a beard and lose my hair.
Peter Jones has challenged.
He's repeating what Freud said. He's not allowed to do that.
Well, actually, there's nothing in the game to stop him doing it.
Well, it's going to get terribly boring if everybody does it.
terribly boring.
Well, and
At
I
the
don't
moment,
think he's
actually, orders
allowed.
were
He's not allowed to bore people in that excruciating way.
If you might, if you were listening more carefully, you would have realized actually the audience were rather
I mean, it
amused
was
when he
boring even when Freud said it. And when Nimmo repeats it, I mean, it's just unbearable.
All right, it's unbearable to you, but we have to bear it because it's part of the game, and there are 2 seconds left on Why I Enjoy Myself, Derek, starting now.
I enjoy myself particularly when Peter Jones finds things unbearable.
Derek Nimmo was then speaking when the whistle went. He's got some more points in that round. And Peter Jones, it's your turn to begin. The subject is how I passed the driving test. Will you talk about that? 60 seconds starting now.
Yes, it was a long time ago. I noticed the inspector looking up and down the street, and he told me that at some point in the drive, he would shout, "Stop," and I was supposed to slam...
Andre Melly has
It's
challenged.
an instructor, isn't it? Not an inspector.
Well, he might have had an inspector off the buses with him, I don't know. Anyway, that's how he referred
It's my
to...
driving test.
It was a long time ago.
It was a long time ago.
Exactly.
What were you driving?
And he was also about to tell you how, so it might have been that he got the inspector, which was a very clever trick. Peter, I don't think you were deviating from the subject. You have another point and 46 seconds on how I passed the driving test, starting now.
Off we went, and we were going along a straight road, and I noticed him peering to left and right, front and back, and then he said, "Stop." Well, I was all ready for it, got my foot over the brake and my hand on the handbrake, and I slammed it on. He crashed his head into the windscreen and passed out. And I passed.
Peter,
Yes?
I'd save the rest in case you get back in, because you were challenged before.
Oh, yes, of course.
Before
it's a
you
game,
actually
isn't it? Yes.
stopped. You were
I've
just
got-
about to put your foot on the brake, and you were challenged by Andre Melly.
Well, because he wasn't sure where he was putting his hand, and there was a big hesitation.
No, he wasn't
there.
sure where he was putting his foot,
Oh,
actually.
his foot.
Yes,
But
but he
you
did
didn't know
actually
where it
pause,
went.
and
Yes, I did,
your
yes.
challenge is correct, Andre, and you have 33 seconds on how I passed the driving test, starting now.
Well, how I passed the driving test, I have to admit, was a kind of bribery. I mean, I was very good at driving, and I did get it the first time, but I wasn't frightfully clever at that three-point turn. At the time, I was in a smash hit, and you couldn't get any tickets for it. So when this instructor said, now, we better do this particular difficult party piece of the driving test, I said, oh, dear, I was thinking in the dressing room last night during this particular show that I wasn't looking forward to this moment. And he said, which show, etc.
So none of us will ever know how Andre Melly passed her driving test, or Peter Jones for that matter. But Andre managed to keep going, spoke when the whistle went, gained an extra point, and has increased her lead at the end of the round. And Andre, we're back with you to start, and the subject is a bargain. Can you talk on that for 60 seconds, starting now?
I think that the greatest bargain I know is me. I am a really marvellous wife, terribly kind, affectionate, and clean in my habits. And there I was sitting...
Peter Jones has challenged.
She's the BBC and she's not allowed to advertise.
Considering the number of people who advertise themselves frequently on the BBC, including people in this programme, I don't see how she's deviating.
You don't? Oh, all right.
So she has another point in 47 seconds on a bargain starting now.
There I was, sitting on the shelf. I hadn't been there very long, but I was over 30 and a bit shop-soiled and going cheap. And my husband picked me up, and he says every day of his life, what a wonderful bargain I was. So... the awful thing is that I'm no good at finding other bargains. I always get there when the price has gone up, if it's houses or knickknacks, things in antique shops, junk shops. Shops?
Freud's challenge.
Shops?
Shops.
Yes, she shopped around too much, didn't she? Clement, you have a point, and you have 22 seconds on a bargain starting now.
The greatest bargain that I ever saw was a stuffed cockatoo in a shop in Portobello Road, which went for £1.14 and 9 in the days before decimalisation. I entered the establishment, asked for the proprietor, declared an interest, and requested that I might be allowed to examine the bird.
Derek Nimmo, will you continue? The subject is showing affection. Would you talk on that for just a minute, starting now?
I think it's very important to show affection to people, don't you, really? Life is so cruel, cold, and miserable sometimes, and if you can just stretch out with a friendly hand and a gentle kiss on an unknown cheek, it sometimes does give people a curious feeling of excitement and gratitude that you have stopped in life's lonely way to give them a tiny weeny peck. And I love to give affection to people, particularly people who've been shop-soiled and left on the shelf for many years.
Peter Jones has challenged you.
Repetition of people.
Yes, there was more.
Oh, absolutely.
Yes,
There was a big crowd of them. I was kissing away like mad.
And there are 35 seconds on showing affection now with you, Peter Jones, starting now.
I'm surprised Derek Nimmo hasn't got into trouble, particularly if he ever travels on the Underground Railway, stretching out this hand and kissing the unknown face. However, he hasn't, and I would like to be the first to congratulate him. Now, I do think it would be nice to trot among the...
Nimmo got it.
Hesitation before he got trotting amongst all
Well,
those...
you didn't know where the hell he was trotting. You could see it in his face. There are 17 seconds left. No, 18 on showing affection, Derek, starting now.
One should always show affection to the lame dogs, the halt, the sick, the diseased, the mentally... People like Nicholas Parsons. They're the sort of people in life that one should stretch out...
Andre Melly has
We had
challenged.
2 more peoples there.
Yes, we did, yes. The lame and the sick and everything. 7 seconds now for showing affection, Andre, starting now.
Dogs, now they really do show affection, unlike cats, which I'm not particularly fond of because I need love.
Well, Andre returning after some absence is doing remarkably well. She's got some more points and increased her lead. Derek Nimmo and Clement Freud are trailing in second, third, and fourth place, Peter Jones. Clement, will you begin the next round? The subject is an awful situation. That is the subject. Will you talk about an awful situation? 60 seconds, just a minute, starting now. Derek Nimmo's challenge.
I don't say anything, there must be hesitation. That there was an awful situation.
But it was an awful situation, wasn't it?
It is.
So, he's given up. There are 58 seconds on an awful situation with you, Derek, starting now.
A situation filled with awe. One goes back, of course, to St. Luke immediately and thinks of that, the city of David, Bethlehem, the shepherds in their fields, watching their flocks.
Peter Jones has challenged.
Hesitation. Because he said all the shepherds.
Oh, yes.
I think it was going to be the shepherds in their shields, was really what was happening.
You don't like Christians. I have to be very careful these days.
With his Christians. No, I think he was giving an impression of keeping going, even if the words
Giving
were
an
not...
impression of keeping going?
Yes, some of the words were not particularly clear, but I understood what he meant. I wouldn't have thought he hesitated. I would have given him the benefit of the doubt on this occasion. He's got against him on the Christians, which seems perfectly fair, and tell him that he has 48
You mean
seconds.
that entitles him to mispronounce on this occasion because he had a point rightly awarded against him in the previous round? Is that what you are saying?
No, I have not said that. It's up to you to see what happens if he does it again, and if you get a challenge, you know, you might get a different decision.
Yes.
One notices that.
48 seconds, Derek, on an awful situation starting now.
A particularly awful situation would be taking your driving test and to do a 3-point turn, then discover that it was 300% more than nothing. And that would be most complicated and very embarrassing, and I would find that particularly awful, as I say. Another time is to be caught with your trousers down. Has it ever happened to you? Look at the audience now. There are many of them. There they are. Ladies as well. What?
Freud is challenged.
Deviation.
Why?
Ladies being caught with their trousers down.
Well, some women wear
sartorial
slacks.
deviation.
Some women wear slacks, and they call them trousers. 30 seconds, still with you, Derek, an awful situation starting now.
I was flying over Saigon a year and a half ago. My plane was just coming into land, and there on one's tail, one saw a wasp.
Clement Freud.
Repetition of one.
Yes, and you have
Oh,
a
you
point.
don't. One, you can
Oh,
always.
yes.
But it was very, very definite one, and there are 20
Eyes
seconds with you.
me's now. We're having some new rules, are we?
Yes.
Eyes, me's, hands, ones.
Can't wait to
I've
get...
been very fair to you
Cheese,
just for a bit. I've
cheese.
given you the benefit of the doubt. Don't quibble now. You had a very definite positive one there, and Clement picked it up, and there are 20 seconds now on an awful situation with you, Clement, starting now.
When I came into the house, I noticed that there was a lot of noise, which shouldn't have been because it was totally deserted. Burglars had come in by the kitchen door and were rifling the refrigerator and helping themselves to a lot of frozen peas from the deep freezer. "Oh ho," I shouted.
I'm surprised that you weren't challenged for repetition on the ho-ho.
Oh ho.
Ho-ho. Oh, as well as the fact that I did a burglar's eating frozen peas. You can't even chew them.
Well, he keeps all his valuables in his fridge.
Well, the peas are going up in price.
Yes, exactly. Clement Freud, you got a point then for speaking when the whistle went, but you're still in third place. Andre, will you begin the next round? The subject is going to the local. Will you talk on that now for just a minute, starting now?
We live in the middle of cornflakes and...
Derek Nimmo has challenged.
Well, hesitation, a general sort of pack-up, really, wasn't it?
I was surprised. What was it you actually said?
I said we live in the middle of cornflakes instead of cornfields. That's really...
They kept going. Some people do live in the middle of cornflakes. And it was a nice thought anyway, but Derry got in for the hesitation. 56 seconds, Derry, going to the local, starting now.
Wherever I go to my local, I spread Rice Krispies in front of me. I do find it terribly nice. It does help the drink to go down. I live near the old Bull and Bush.
Derek, you've been challenged by Andre Melly long before
the
that.
Krispies that should have been in his fridge.
It's the same. Like, look, one moment it's Critchen. You don't like Critchen. I try to help you by saying Kispies instead of Crispies. You don't like that either.
I didn't.
Yes, but the R in the Crispies came about 20 minutes too late.
And Andre has a correct challenge, and there are 53 seconds on going to the local. Andre, starting now.
The Wheat Sheaf, it's called. A lovely pub at the end of a long farm track, and thank goodness for it, because friends come down for the weekend, and I've never got the lunch ready. Go to the local, I say. Off they do go and are missing for a very long time.
Derek Nimmo's challenged.
Sorry, I thought it was an you know, but it wasn't. So it was just So it was. I was a hesitation, but it wasn't. I don't think.
Well, I would have thought it was hesitation.
You did. Oh, all right. I was hesitation.
There we are. You have the subject and 39 seconds on going to the local, starting now.
There is no justice in this world. I love going to the local when I can order my pint of ginger pop. Now, that's something that's going out of fashion, isn't it? And you know there's an awful lot to be in it, because if you is an R in the month.
Andre Melly challenged.
What is he talking about?
I've no idea. You have a point. And,
deviation, if he isn't R.
22 seconds, starting now.
Then they come back, much the worse for wear, and don't notice what a disgusting meal they're having, which is marvellous. But I never seem to get there. I have been in the middle of the week with the children, and then I have to sit out in the freezing cold.
Clement Freud is challenged.
Deviation. You
Why?
can't take children into a pub, but she was going to qualify it, and
Sit in the
I
freezing
got
cold?
in. Yes.
Anybody who's prepared to bribe the inspectors taking you on a driving test is surely able to get a kid into a pub for a drink.
There are 15 seconds for you, Andre, to continue on going to the local, starting now.
We all sit outside with Coca-Cola, and I have half a pint, and absolutely miserable. Why can't we be like France and the continent for children to enjoy?
Clement Freud.
It's repetition of children.
Yes, I'm afraid
They've already
there was,
waited
yes.
outside the pub.
Yes. They're all waiting outside, but Clement Freud. And there are 4 seconds left, Clement, and the subject is going to the local, and you start now.
I tend to go very quickly, putting my left foot in front of my right.
I just had a message that we have no more time, so I'm afraid that is the end of the contest, and I will read you the final score. And a very close contest it was. Peter Jones wasn't quite so close, I'm afraid. He was trailing a little in 4th place, but Clement Freud was in 3rd place, only 1 point behind Derek Nimmo. Derek Nimmo was in 2nd place, only 1 point behind this week's winner, returning to triumph it again, Andre Melly. We hope you've enjoyed this edition of Just a Minute. From all of us here, goodbye.
The chairman of Just a Minute was Nicholas Parsons. The programme was devised by Ian Messiter and produced by David Hatch.